Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 1 Source. In the real world, early July, S01 Mechanical City. Inside the office of Jing'an No. 1 Senior High School. See that? Yuan's felt like what had just happened was a long and blurry dream, and he just came back to his senses now. His eyes followed the direction that Teacher Lin was pointing. In the distance is a building on the edge of the city, a dilapidated building. Under the illumination of the setting sun, it seems like an island in time. This building is only half of a building, with an inclined and smooth cross-section and slightly irregular protrusions, revealing a tragic beauty, like a thigh cut off by a sharp blade. The rough concrete edges of the fracture are like broken bones, sharp and glaring. Yeah, Yuan's responded. Many people have seen it, but many people don't know that it was the earliest central site of the mechanical city. Teacher Lin paused and looked back at Yuanzi. It used to be the tallest building in the mechanical city, but it was destroyed by the source beast with just one blow. Teacher Lin turned back to his seat and tapped on the holographic screen. This is the casualty data of the source warriors fighting against the source beasts in the past 10 years. Especially in the past few years, the casualty rate has exceeded 50%, and you can't even reach the minimum threshold of the source power required for a source warrior. I know that, but I believe. You have such a good brain. It would be a good idea for you to join the technology class and enter the weapons manufacturing bureau. Teacher Lin interrupted Yuan's before he could finish and looked at him seriously. I believe in myself. There is still more than a month left, and I believe I can reach the entry level of source power for a source warrior. Yuanzi's tone became more determined, and he was even more unmoved by Teacher Lin's advice. Teacher Lin originally wanted to help Yuan's change it privately, but he suddenly received a secret message in the morning, so he had to take the initiative to ask Yuan's out for a talk. If you have any ideas, tell the teacher immediately. Teacher Lin hit the enter key heavily, confirming Yuan's willingness to be reassigned to a different class. Then you should work hard. As soon as Yuan's went out, someone greeted him. How's the volunteering going? He asked casually. It goes without saying. It's really dangerous to fight against source beasts. You should really consider it. He's parents are both source beast hunters, so they naturally put the safety of their friends first. Recently, many students with low source power have disappeared. You should also pay attention. Here, whoever bullies you, I will beat him up. I will protect you. Halma raised his fist high, showing the power of the hairy bear man. Trust me, I can make my own way. Yuan smiled and walked towards his best friend. That's natural. Hikan and Halma smiled at each other, breathed a sigh of relief, and said in unison. They walked and chatted for a while, and as it got dark, they went home. Yuan's walked home alone in silence. The afterglow of the setting sun cast a long shadow along the road, as if to drag out the heaviness in his heart. His steps were neither fast nor slow, tapping the ground rhythmically, as if he was thinking about something. When he got home, his father was already waiting for Yuan's. In Yuan's eyes, his father was always busy at work, even at home. You're home. The father didn't look at Yuan's, and continued to concentrate on his work on the full department screen. There's the source power potion on the table, remember to take it. Dad and your master believe that you will definitely be able to enter the top class. No one knows a son better than his father. As Yuan's father, he had seen through his son's thoughts long ago and bought some source power potion for his son to use for training. However, one should know that the expensive price of source power potion makes it prohibitive for many ordinary families, and it is a great luxury for Yuan's family. Okay. Yuan's found something suspicious. His father did not replace the damaged prosthesis. My father's hands seemed to be forgotten by technology. His old skin was intertwined with advanced mechanical parts, worn bandages and exposed wires coexisted, and he could smell machine oil and a pungent smell on his fingertips. Why didn't you change your prosthetic limbs? My father looked up at Yuan's, his brows relaxed, as if all his worries had disappeared at this moment. There's been a promotion for the energy potion on the online store these days, and the best one is about the same price as the prosthetic limb. I think the prosthetic limb can still be repaired, but there aren't many chances to get a discount on potions, not to mention that energy is so important to you. Indeed, since the catastrophe, Blue Star has undergone earth-shaking changes. Almost all animals have evolved into source beasts that can release electromagnetic pulses, source beasts that can hide, source beasts that can use fluid vortexes, source beasts that can manipulate minds. Humans are no longer the only masters of the blue planet, but fortunately, the heavens have not abandoned humans. People who are born with source power are called source warriors. They can continuously absorb source power, continuously evolve themselves, and use high-tech source energy weapons to kill source beasts that threaten humans. A source warrior can change the fate of a family, and a powerful source warrior can even control the world, so Yuan's father and master care about him so much. Yuan's is a child who is born with source power. He is the hope in his parents' eyes. Thinking of this, Yuan's felt a warm current in his heart, but his nose felt sore. Yuan's couldn't hide his heavy feelings. Not wanting to be discovered by his father, he picked up the small blue bottle on the table, slipped back to his room and gently closed the door. The father continued to work hard, and reminded Yuans, remember to come out for dinner later. Yuans relaxed a little after returning to the room. The room seemed like a small world away from the world. It was clean and tidy, making people feel very comfortable. But Yuans couldn't feel comfortable at the moment. A week ago, Yuans, a sophomore in high school, had just finished his final exams and wanted to secretly visit his father to give him a surprise. But through the glass of the factory, he saw a side that made him feel ashamed. Facing a child of the same age as himself, his father actually put on a flattering attitude and kept nodding and bowing. At that time, only fragments of conversation could be heard from the two people in the distance, and Yuans could barely hear that they were talking about overtime pay and payment on time. Although his father always regarded his dignity as his life, Yuans had never seen him so humble. But the child was so disdainful that he thought his father was blocking his way, so he kicked his father away and walked out of the office. Afterwards, he fled the scene in a panic, fearing that he would be discovered by his father. It seems that my father had no choice but to do this in order to get there before the event ended, but he ended up buying the useless source of energy potion that Master mentioned. Alas, I don't know how I raised the money later. Yuans lay on the bed, his heart filled with anger and dissatisfaction. This was just what he deserved. Why can some people in this world do whatever they want? Why is this world so unfair? We all live hard, just wanting to get what we deserve, but we are constantly trampled upon. Yuan stared at the ceiling of the room, gradually calming his turbulent emotions, then raised one hand, gradually clenched it into a fist, and silently swore in his heart. I have to save my dignity. I can't let anyone step on my family. At this time, strong emotions stimulated Yuan's, making his heart feel as if it was being pulled and torn. Immediately afterwards, it was as if his brain was hit by a hammer, and Yuan's fell into a coma. Falling into deep darkness, Yuan's almost lost all of his five senses. Only the light surrounding his body moved around like a ghost, bringing him a faint but precious sense of security. In this endless darkness, that light became his only support and comfort. This is where, the darkness a year ago. What do you mean? Who are you? The darkness imposed by others here can easily obliterate the soul. I am only temporarily sealing it in the spiritual space and maintaining the seal with my mind. Others. So you protected me, you protected yourself, and the power in your body has begun to awaken. Then who are you? I exist deep in your soul. I am your inner voice. I am your subconscious. You can say that I am you. When you were a child, you gave me a name, Flo. So how can I get out? Find your fear and look it in the face. As the light gradually merged into darkness, the sound drifted further and further away. Yuan's gradually fell into deep thought, because he couldn't think of what his fear was. Are they those terrifying source beasts? Is it the source of my own power that is holding me back? Quote. Many things occurred to Yuanzia's mind and many images flashed through his mind, but he denied them one by one. Then, a series of images appeared in his mind. It was when he was young, watching his parents working day and night for the family's livelihood. It was when he grew up, his parents saved money just to buy him a new piece of clothing. It was when he entered Jing'an No. 1 middle school, and his parents ran around to raise money. All these made him feel powerless, afraid that he could not change the fate of his family and give his parents a better life. This fear, like a cold steel needle, pierced deeply into his heart. Yuan's trembled. He never realized that this was his fear, because this was his goal, his determination, his motivation, but also his deepest fear, because he was afraid of failure, afraid of not being able to repay his parents, afraid that one day, the son wants to support his parents but they are no longer there. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and let his heart gradually calm down. Then, another picture appeared in his mind, the joy of his parents seeing him grow taller, the indescribable joy of seeing his parents taking him to the martial arts school on the first day wearing new clothes, the proud look of showing off to his neighbors after he entered No. 1 middle school. My parents didn't have too high expectations for me. They just wanted me to grow up healthy and happy, and didn't ask me to do anything. These are just my own fears. The moment he realized it, Yuan's felt the darkness around him begin to be peeled away, and a little bit of light gathered into a thin curtain of light in front of his eyes, and he gradually woke up. Yuan stood up from the bed, stretched his arms, and the moment he clenched his fists, a deep black mist surrounded him. That time when he was unconscious, he was attacked. Is it related to the missing students that he mentioned? If so, how could he leave such a big hidden danger behind? Yuan shook his head and dispersed the black mist on his fist. He decided not to think about these problems for now and would rather spend more time with his parents if he had time. Chapter 2 Family. When Yuan opened the door, he saw his parents busy in the kitchen. He also smelled the aroma of Kiwan beast meat in the air. It seemed that something good was going to happen today. I was admitted to Jing'an No. One high school in advance. My parents said we should have something delicious today to celebrate. Yuan Tai shouted excitedly to his brother. Ha ha ha, I knew Yuan Tai could get into Jing'an no. One middle school. Yuan's excitedly picked up his younger brother and started spinning around like he did when he was a kid sitting on a rocking chair. Don't shake your brother's head silly. Like you, his head is the most precious thing to him. The fact that you were able to get into no. One middle school shows that you two are worthy of being my children. The father patted the two of them and said half jokingly and half seriously. How dare you say that? With your stubborn mind, I don't understand how you gave birth to these 3 children. Fortunately, our daughter Shuiner has been busy with work. If she were here, she would definitely blame you as her father. That's because you, my wife, are beautiful and smart. Go away, go away. You are so naughty at your age. Aren't you ashamed in front of the children? Go get some pairs of chopsticks and get ready to eat. I don't know if it was because of the heat from the kitchen that made her face blush, or if she was just a little shy, but a long-lost blush appeared on the mother's face. The happiest thing for Yuan's is to eat with his family while chatting about family matters. The simple and ordinary life is the real life. Yuan's also hoped that it would always be like this. While eating, Yuan's announced a piece of good news. The energy potion is working. I feel my body is getting stronger. It's really top-notch stuff. You get what you pay for. It's totally worth the money. Go to the martial arts gym tomorrow and talk to your master and tell him the good news. The father put down the bowl, picked up a piece of meat and put it in Yuan's bowl, but next time I should also get a better prosthetic limb. That's right. You've been using it for so long. It won't work if you repair it again. The mother also picked up a piece of meat and put it in Yuan Tai's bowl. When I get into the elite training camp, there should be better prosthetic limbs there. Yuan's felt a little sad, but still smiled. The source power potion was actually useless, but he couldn't let his father know that he had spent a lot of money on a piece of junk and let all his hard work go to waste. Don't think too far. Today is a double happiness for our family. The joy in the mother's heart was beyond words. Yuan Tai, you have to learn from your brother. Your brother has always been the top student in the grade in academic subjects. Although you can't become a Yuan warrior, if you are good at academic subjects, you can enter the government like your sister in the future. The father became a little serious. Brother, the progress of source power is also very slow. It is all accumulated slowly. You are so confident. Yuan Tai interrupted from the side. He has always been a little casual and didn't want to face the pressure from his father. He muttered quietly, what's the use of being good at liberal arts? Don't underestimate me, your brother. I have made an appointment with my master to go to the martial arts gym for intensive training. Yuan's helped his brother smooth things over and added, but what dad said is also right. It is important to maintain this grade. And if you are good at liberal arts, you can enter the science and technology class. I heard from teacher Lin that you can enter the weapons manufacturing bureau. Okay, I'll listen to you, brother. Yuan Tai also smiled happily. After dinner, the family sat down together to watch a movie. However, as the lights were turned off and the family huddled in the darkness, Yuan seemed a little absent-minded. Recalling the darkness he had just encountered in his spiritual space, he still felt a lingering fear. He looked at his family members who were still immersed in the thrilling plot, looked at his father hugging his mother lovingly, and looked at his younger brother who was concentrating. Yuan smiled with relief again, immersed in the plot of the movie, and enjoyed the happy time with his family. Beauty is fleeting, but there are always uninvited guests. The family was still savoring the climax of the movie. Yuan Chong opened the door and returned the money. Someone was banging on the door of Yuan's house frantically. My father asked everyone else to hide first and acted calmly. The two Yuan's brothers hid behind the door and saw their father open the door and the two hooligans rushed in. They sat beside the sofa, swinging their feet and looking around the house. Sit down and have some tea. Yuan Chong's voice was not loud, but it sounded commanding. The two were stunned, they had never encountered such a situation before. Then they were pressed on the sofa by their father, and one of the red-haired people actually picked up a cup of hot tea and prepared to drink it. What are you drinking? The blue-haired man glanced at his companion, then stretched out a hand to hold down the red-haired man's hand, and said to his father, we are here to ask for money. I know. If you know, why don't you give it to me quickly? The red-haired man also pretended to be powerful. He threw the teacup heavily to the ground, stood up, and looked at him with a fierce look. The principal and interest have been paid off, so there is nothing else to give. The father smiled and hoped to communicate with them again. The blue-haired boy stared at his father provocatively, their noses only about 20 centimeters apart, and he slapped his father's face twice in a frivolous way. This made the brothers Yuan's and Yuan Tai, who were hiding, clench their fists. But when we looked back and calculated, it was off by 10%. No, it was off by 20%. Quote. I clearly. Yuan saw his father's troubled expression and recalled what he had seen. He immediately understood. His father had not received his salary and had sought an underground loan. Even if his father had paid off the loan, the two of them would still come to cause trouble. You don't have to give it to me if you don't want to. You know the rules, so you can get a beating. The two men immediately rained fists on their father. Judging from the strength of their punches, they were only apprentices who had just entered the ranks of source warriors. However, every punch landed heavily on my father, as if to crush him. The father clenched the handles of the chair tightly and endured the violence of the two men. His nose was bleeding, but he still used his eyes to stop the brother's impulse. But the two brothers couldn't stand it. Just as Yuan's was about to rush out, Yuantai picked up a small stool from the ground and rushed out directly, but was kicked away and started to wrestle with the red-haired man. The mother also rushed forward to protect her son and was hit by several solid punches. Blood could be faintly seen. Yuan's anger suddenly exploded, and the black mist in his hand reappeared and hit the blue-haired man heavily. The man's steps became disorderly, and he backed away directly, tripping over the threshold and falling to the ground. He was talking nonsense like a madman, and his eyes were full of fear when he looked at Yuan's. The other man with red hair saw that Yuanzi was also a source warrior and that his elder brother had lost his fighting ability, so he flashed in front of the man with blue hair. I'm sorry, I didn't know there was a source warrior in your family, I was wrong, we don't want the interest. The money is cleared like this. You know the rules, right? I know. Then you have to keep some interest. Yuan's came forward, grabbed him by the collar and punched him viciously, scaring the red-haired guy so much that he trembled all over. Go! Yuantai also shouted from the side. The two brothers smashed various objects in the house, punched them, and kicked them. Anyway, no matter how weak these two things were, they were at least source warriors and would not be knocked out so easily. The two frightened men were completely unable to fight back when faced with their brothers working together, and were knocked to the ground in a short while. In the end, it was their parents who pulled the two apart. Before closing the door, Yuantai stuck his head out and spat. Coward, how dare you bully us? Then, the door was slammed shut by Yuantai. On the other side, the two brothers finally got up, supported each other and limped down the stairs. While slowly going down the stairs, the blue-haired boy gradually woke up from his fear, slapped the red-haired boy, and kicked him again because he was not satisfied. Look at other people's brothers. Chapter 3, Concentration in, Flow. The next day, Yuan's came to the martial arts gym as usual to train martial arts. The receptionists at the martial arts gym had been huddled together and whispering a while ago, but when they saw him approaching, they immediately fell silent and sat upright in their seats. Hello sir, here is something for you. The polite voice of the staff at the front desk of the martial arts gym still couldn't hide their perfunctory and arrogant attitude, and their eyes were full of disdain. She called Yuan's and handed him a gift box with one hand. Master Li told you to change into new clothes and go to the main training ground to find him today. Understood. Yuan's agreed, took the things, and walked towards the changing room without looking back. The receptionist looked at his back, crossed his arms and frowned, turned around, exchanged a mocking look with others, and quickly walked back to the front desk. The envious look on his face disappeared without a trace, replaced by a gloomy look. Sisters, look at him. What's so great about him? Isn't it just that he has a good master? Her tone revealed obvious dissatisfaction and jealousy. Really? The last time I helped you, you didn't even give me a tip. What a poor bastard. Another woman agreed, pinching her fingers together and pointing in the direction of Yuan's. That's right, don't you even look at your own weight. Yuan's was gradually going away, but his keen hearing still caught those subtle complaints. No wonder they were like that. After all, if it weren't for the support of my master, it would be very difficult for me to support the huge expenses of practicing in a martial arts school with my own family. Yuan's walked through the curtain and smiled. Yuan's opened his own locker, which was empty except for a full-length mirror. He immediately understood himself in the mirror. He still looked like a weak scholar. According to the past standards, he was definitely a thin dog. But this could not hide his tall and smooth figure, and his pair of bright and sharp eyes. It would be great if my body could be stronger, so that it could hold more source power. When Yuan's took off his shirt, his 2 rows of ribs were clearly visible. No wonder he sighed like that. Yuan's opened the gift box and put on the new training suit. It fit Yuan's body perfectly but was not tight at all. He could move freely. The training suit could also show his physical condition at any time. It must be another expensive gift from his master. Yuan's walked towards the training room outside the locker room, then hurried back as if he remembered something he had missed. After rummaging around in the locker, he grabbed a small bottle of blue liquid and stuffed it into his pocket before leaving the locker room. This was not his first time going to the main training ground, and the master was still waiting at the old place. That familiar side profile figure is not tall and sturdy, but lonely and upright. There is an indescribable power, as if every movement contains strength. His back stands tall like an ancient pine tree, and his deep eyes reveal the confidence that he is in control of everything. Hello, Master. It is good. Yuan's loud shout represents his enterprising spirit and unyielding determination. The shouts from the master and disciple attracted the attention of several masters who were resting nearby. Many students even stopped their training after hearing these two shouts, causing their masters to scold them angrily. It was at this time that a mocking voice became louder. The foundation of martial arts lies in strength. Zhang Xiao deliberately scolded his apprentice who was training, and then looked at Yuan Zi and his apprentice with interest. His voice became louder, otherwise, everything will be in vain. Li Haisheng glanced at Zhang Xiao, tilted his mouth slightly, and looked at him with contempt. Silence is better than words at this time. Strength cannot be expressed with words. Li Haisheng led Yuan's across the main training ground and into a quiet back room. In Li Haisheng's eyes, martial arts is not only the embodiment of strength but also the crystallization of wisdom. Brute force alone cannot bring out the full strength and cannot be used in actual combat. It's true that strength is the basis of combat, but how to use it is also a science. Li Haisheng paused, called up a holographic projection of human anatomy, and continued to explain the principles of muscle force. Long before the catastrophe, humans had figured out a simple way to fight back. They tightened their muscles, turning them from soft to hard. The muscles attached to the body like a layer of armor, thus playing a protective role. When they swung out, they struck. When they held back, they resisted the blow. But ancient China has a very special power. Master, the book says that there is a hidden force in ancient China, an invisible force, a way of exerting force that is almost lost. That's right and that's not right. In fact, dark energy is just one of its ways of use. To be more precise, it should be called internal energy. After saying that, Li Haisheng took a horse stance and immediately raised his hand to attack. The movement was so quick that Yuan's could only see the movement of his shoulder. Immediately after the sonic boom ended, another crisp, pop, sound was heard. Yuan Zi's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said thoughtfully, Master, I want to see it again. No problem. Li Haisheng nodded in agreement. When he was ready to go again, Yuan's immediately immersed himself in the state of flow, and everything around him seemed to slow down. However, even with such stagnant time, Yuan's was unable to fully capture every detail of his master's movements. The flow of power had just dissipated as soon as it touched his perception. What did you feel? Li Haisheng smiled at Yuan's. His apprentice had a high level of comprehension, but at most he should be able to see some uses, and he should not be able to capture these details. That's it, that's how I should put it. Yuan Zi came out of this state, thinking in his mind, it's that the action was like resisting the blow at the beginning, but it was a bit like fighting back at the end, but there is a contradiction between the two, and also. There is no contradiction. Li Haisheng was very satisfied with Yuan's answer, so he interrupted his apprentice and wanted to continue explaining. Master, I feel something else. What do you think? I feel that there is a force in your body flowing to your shoulders, and then you can exert such power. Yuan's made some adjustments and imitated it. It's just like this, but I don't have as much power as Master that is flowing to a certain place. Li Haisheng suddenly became serious and asked Yuan's to do it again. It was still that clumsy and even somewhat ridiculous shoulder strike action, but Li Haisheng saw the source power in his body turning into qi, and then flowing to Yuan's shoulder, and even enhancing some of the source power. How many more surprises do I have to give myself? Li Haisheng sighed in his heart. Over the years, Yuan's comprehension has never disappointed him. However, after trying thousands of methods, his Yuan force did not increase. He even began to doubt his judgment when he first met Yuan's. However, the clouds will eventually clear and the sun will rise. It seems that the family secret method is worth a try. But soon, Li Haisheng hesitated, because once the secret method was exposed, he would be safe, but Yuan's would definitely be hunted down endlessly by the family. To pass it on or not to pass it on. Chapter 4 It's not your turn to teach. After some psychological struggle, Li Haisheng decided to give the choice to Yuan's. Li Haisheng blocked all electronic devices and lit candles one by one, with the flames of the candles solidifying around him. Yuan's could clearly see that this was the release of source power. In fact, this is also a way to release internal strength. Yuan's was ordered to stay where he was, watching his master perform these movements. His heart beat faster and faster, until the only sound in the whole room was Yuan's heartbeat. Do you feel that the source of energy in your body is more abundant? After doing all this, the master stood with his hands behind his back, his face very solemn and full of confusion. He hoped that Yuan Zi's answer would be no, and that it was just a false alarm and he was making a fuss out of nothing, but he also hoped that it was true, because then Yuan Zi would be able to realize his amazing talent and step into the ranks of high-level Yuan warriors. Moreover, with his extraordinary comprehension, it would not be a pipe dream for him to enter the elite training camp. Yuan sensed his body and found that his energy level, which had not improved at all for many years, had improved a little bit. It seems to have a little effect. Okay, answer a few questions for me next. Listen to the master. How many years have you been my apprentice? More than 10 years. Remember how many ways we have tried to increase our energy over the years. Li Haisheng looked at Yuan's, feeling mixed emotions, and said with emotion, this should be the first time that this effect has occurred. Yes, master. Oh, how come you can comprehend it so quickly this time? Li Haisheng couldn't help but sigh when he thought of himself observing the secret techniques in his family. It took me 2 months of my father's tireless teaching before I could do the movements properly. As for mobilizing my energy, it took me half a year of practice. What I had never heard of was that practicing secret techniques could increase my energy. Moreover, at that time, I was only this old, and I had not been expelled from the family. Li Haisheng shook his head, unwilling to be controlled by memories. The part you comprehended is the ancient martial arts secret manual of my original family, the Li family, which is not passed on to others. Only the direct descendants of the Li family can practice it, and all learners must use a special instrument to imprint an oath not to pass it on to others. Master, it's okay. It's just that everything is difficult at the beginning. There must be other ways. Yuan looked at the lonely expression of his master and felt a little uncomfortable. However, due to some unexpected circumstances, I can teach you. Li Haisheng sighed, turned around and faced Yuan, but once it is leaked, you will be hunted down by the Li family. Master, what are you going to do? Me. Don't worry about me. They won't do anything to me. Just take care of yourself. Li Haisheng was a little surprised that Yuan was actually worried about him. I do. Yuan said firmly. Do you know that this is no joke and that it is very difficult? I am dull, but I am not unwilling to make progress. You told me that there is no shortcut to gaining power. We have tried so many methods and worked so hard for so many years. How can we just give up? Okay. Li Haisheng's emotions became high, and the candlelight began to flicker vigorously. The flames gradually surrounded the two of them like a cover, and everything from the outside world was completely blocked. After a long time, as the protective shield formed by the flame gradually dissipated and the candles gradually went out, the transmission and teaching of the secret method also came to a temporary end. Yuan clenched his fists and felt that his source power had increased greatly. This is the first stage of the ancient martial arts breathing method and the accompanying boxing method. Although it is very basic, remember that it must not be used publicly unless it is absolutely necessary. Let's stop here for today's ancient martial arts training. I'll take you to the free power area to familiarize yourself with your increased strength. Li Haisheng brought Yuan to the free weight area and guided Yuan to do strength training according to a very standard demonstration. The sun is rising from the west. Are you coming to the power area? It's so heavy, how can your disciple bear it? Just now, Li Haisheng ignored his leader and looked at him with that kind of eyes. I have lost all my face. I must get it back from his apprentice. Zhang Xiao walked over and pointed at his burly student, saying loudly, Our Li Hao only trained 75 kilograms, your apprentice should be at this position. After saying that, Zhang Xiao pulled out the bolt and threw it aside. This is suitable for your apprentice, Master Li, don't be too proud, you have to consider your apprentice's health. Look at his pitiful skinny arms and legs, I feel sorry for him. The people around couldn't help but whisper, their eyes shifting back and forth between Li Haisheng, Zhang Xiao and his 3 disciples, but no one dared to express their opinions. Yes, these 2 people have always been at odds with each other. One of them comes from a big family no matter what, and the other is protected by the president. In the guild hall, they are the only 2 who often engage in a tit-for-tat fight between gods. Yuan's gaze also shifted to Li Hao on the left. He was using the same equipment and performing the same movements, manipulating the 75 kilograms weight with great ease. From time to time, he looked at Yuan provocatively, his eyes full of mockery. Yuan was not affected by Zhang Xiao's words. He was calm, as if the noise from the outside world had nothing to do with him. He just silently adjusted the gear of the machine, then took a deep breath and started pulling. 75 kilograms, 80 kilograms, 90 kilograms. The gears are constantly increasing, but Yuan's movements always maintain a high standard, smooth and stable. Every time he pulls, it seems to prove his strength to the world, and every breath seems to accumulate strength. When the gear increased to 100 kilograms, Yuan remained calm, as if this was just part of his warm-up. However, Li Hao next to him had already begun to struggle. His movements were stiff, his breathing was rapid, and his face was flushed. When Zhang Xiao saw this scene, his expression became extremely interesting. He was shocked at first, then unwilling and angry. He never thought that this skinny boy in his eyes could surpass his favorite student in strength. How is this possible? Zhang Xiao's face was filled with disgust and disbelief, unable to accept this fact. But the facts are the most powerful response. Yuan, you haven't rested for the whole day. Go home early and have a good rest. Okay. Yuan's responded, then packed up his things in an orderly manner and walked into the locker room. Li Haisheng's eyes followed Yuan's back until he disappeared behind the door of the locker room. Then, he retracted his gaze and turned to the slightly embarrassed Zhang Xiao and his apprentice. He gently adjusted his collar and walked steadily to Zhang Xiao's side. My apprentice, it's not your turn to teach me. Chapter 5 Blue Vial. Master, you said that this would be given to you. After washing up, Yuan's did not leave the martial arts gym in a hurry, but waited for his master at the door. Li Haisheng took a small bottle of blue liquid from Yuan's, raised his head, held it under the light and examined it carefully, then looked at Yuan's. His eyes flickered, and he was obviously considering his words. His deep expression seemed to be weighing various considerations in his heart. After a moment, he said, "This should be the energy potion your father bought for you. I also said that you don't need this, but forget it. Your father really has a hard time. I will find a way to refund him, so you don't have to worry about it." Yuan's didn't understand either. Logically speaking, this was the most direct and simplest way to increase source power on the market, but his master repeatedly forbade Yuan's to use these potions. He had asked this question many times, but without exception, the master seemed to be hesitant to speak, and only said, "Just listen to me." Over time, Yuan stopped asking about this matter. "Yuan Zi, let's talk while we walk." Li Haisheng lit a cigarette, then pushed Yuan's, indicating that he should go ahead. Do you know what the source force is? The book says that source power is a new substance discovered in the human body after the catastrophe. It is the power of the body's origin. To put it simply, it represents the body's overall quality. The essence of source power is a manifestation of energy. But it's not entirely correct. Li Haisheng took a deep puff of cigarette and blew out a smoke ring into the sky. Your book should also say that the source of power that exists naturally in the human body is called innate source power, which can passively draw external source power into the body, thereby strengthening the physical fitness. Without innate source power, one will always remain an ordinary person and cannot become a source warrior. Yes. Then have you ever thought that your parents, sister, and brother may actually become origin warriors? How is that possible? The book also says, don't become stupid, you. Don't be so rigid. Li Haisheng used a joking way to hide his loneliness. Ha ha ha, I haven't taken the college entrance exam yet, so I can only listen to what is said in the books. Textbooks won't teach you everything, so let me ask you another question. Li Haisheng quickly took the opportunity to change the subject. What does the book say about the catastrophe? This is an important test point. I remember it very clearly. Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me now. This is a disaster of mass extinction caused by a virus that first appeared in 2030. It has a powerful transformation ability, can genetically modify organisms, and can also change the various properties of inorganic matter. It even transformed the blue star planet itself, causing the blue star to grow rapidly in size, resulting in the emergence of large areas of empty uninhabited areas. Therefore, the pathogen is not a virus in the traditional sense. This ability exceeds human understanding of viruses, so it is called a mutation source by the academic community. Humans had no way to deal with the mutation source. The creatures that failed to be transformed could only die one after another. The surviving creatures all gained some special evolutions, and humans only gained a significant improvement in physical fitness. What happened afterwards? Do you remember what important events happened? Then came the Great Cataclysm, the Source Beast War. The Source Beast's evolution speed and quality far surpassed that of humans, and humans were no longer the only masters of the Blue Planet. The Source Beasts launched the Source Beast War in retaliation for the sixth mass extinction, led by humans. Under successive attacks, the human population was reduced by more than half, and they barely survived under the protection of nuclear weapons. But not long after, a Beast King-level Source Beast appeared, which had the ability to withstand nuclear weapons and could even use the energy of chain reactions to continue evolving. Just when humans were in despair, they also evolved the first batch of top powerhouses, and with the newly discovered materials and newly developed source energy weapons, they ended the war. People always seek enjoyment and forget too many lessons. Forgot what? Yuan's asked curiously. Forget the lessons of history and the cruelty of nature. Li Haisheng exhaled another circle of smoke and said slowly. Our ancestors were obsessed with the convenience brought by technology, overexploited and destroyed the ecology, forgetting how powerful nature is. Until the arrival of the mutation source, the endless wealth that we once treasured became worthless. Only survival is the most basic need. In peacetime, people tend to indulge in pleasure and pursue material satisfaction, but ignore spiritual pursuits and personal growth. When disaster strikes, the things we once took for granted become out of reach. Quote. Not only that, humans always like to fight among themselves. They fight to the death for some resources and power. Li Haisheng added. It's much better now. The threat from the source beast is so great now, everyone is quite united. Unity. Human nature will never change. You still have a lot to learn. Li Haisheng put out his half-smoked cigarette, threw it on the ground and stomped on it twice, then caught up with Yuan's and patted him on the shoulder. Go home, I won't visit your parents this time. Li Haisheng watched Yuan's back disappear in the community and squatted on the side of the road. He took a deep breath and his eyes fell back on the small bottle of blue liquid in his hand. The blue liquid seemed to contain the power of the deep ocean, and as it swayed slightly, it was like waves gently rising and falling in the silent night. The faint blue light from the bottle, under the reflection of the street lamp, seemed to complement the starlight in the night sky, revealing a mysterious and profound beauty. Li Haisheng held it and tilted the vial slightly, and the blue liquid began to flow slowly, as if it had life. The texture of the liquid was silky and delicate, like the finest silk. Under the refraction of light, it sometimes appeared deep blue, and sometimes glowed with a faint purple. He stared at the blue liquid intently, with a complicated expression on his face. The blue color of the liquid reminded him of distant memories, those years that once made him proud. His solemn gaze seemed to see through some unknown secret in the blue liquid. Now, this stuff is getting worse and worse. Li Haisheng shook his head slightly, with a hint of sarcasm on his face. These families, these old guys, are so cruel that they can even destroy their own path. An inexplicable emotion surged in Li Haisheng's heart, a mixture of nostalgia for the past and helplessness towards reality. Li Haisheng exerted a little force with his hand and shattered the blue bottle. The blue liquid gradually slipped from his palm through his fingers and fell to the ground. Each drop of liquid was like a fragment of bright stars, sparkling with a mysterious and deep luster. The moment they touched the ground, they seemed to merge into the land and disappeared silently. Li Haisheng followed these blue droplets closely, and an indescribable emotion surged in his heart. This liquid not only represents the glory and secrets of the past, but also carries the complex entanglement between him, his family, and the past. A trace of determination flashed across his face, as if he was bidding farewell to an era and to those things he once cherished but had to give up. As the last drop of blue liquid disappeared, only a hint of coolness and wetness remained on the palm of the hand. Li Haisheng slowly withdrew his hand, stood up, and prepared to face the unknown fate. Chapter 6 Protection. In the early morning, sunlight shines through the glass door onto the reception area at the front desk, bathing the entire space in a warm and bright light. When Yuan stepped into the bright light, the girls at the front desk immediately stood up, bowed slightly, and their voices were full of respect. Mr. Yuan, you are always so early, it is really admirable. Your master asked you to go to the old place to train first, and he will be there soon. The contempt of the past had disappeared from their eyes, and was replaced by sincere respect. They folded their hands in front of their bodies, and every movement revealed humility and obedience, which was in stark contrast to their cold and even somewhat provocative attitude in the past. Not only was this the case openly, Yuan's hadn't heard them gossiping about him behind his back for a while. However, none of this matters to Yuanzi. He has only one goal in mind, which is to pass the upcoming top-class test. This is an important assessment that will determine the direction of his future, and he cannot afford to slack off. Of course, he knew that he had to catch up with more than 10 years of hard work by others, and this was not a gap that could be easily made up in just one summer vacation. Therefore, he came to training early every day and did not dare to slack off in the slightest. Drink. Yuan threw punch after punch in the empty field. His punches were so sharp that they seemed to tear through the air. He appeared agile and powerful. With the last swing, Yuan's put his palms down, pressed his arms downward, and took a long breath, ending his morning warm-up. He picked up the water bottle on the wall and gulped down the water. His eyes were involuntarily attracted by the reflection of the mirror. The figure reflected in the mirror was no longer the frail scholar in his memory. After a month of training and tempering, his originally thin shoulders have become broad and strong, with muscle lines faintly visible under his training clothes. His chest has become thicker, like a small hill. Well, that's really good. Yuan's was satisfied with his changes. Li Haisheng appeared out of nowhere, holding the teaching plan and slapping Yuan's on the head. Why are you so narcissistic? Hurry up and practice, there are only a few days left. Here are the details of the assessment for the day after tomorrow. They are a little different from previous years. Take a look at them quickly. Li Haisheng handed Yuan's a piece of paper, coughed, and began to explain. I'm not too worried about the theory part, after all, you can get full marks in science. But your source power is too low, and you can't use ancient boxing, so I'm not sure. The biggest change this time is the temporary addition of a recommendation system. Most of the places are occupied by the rich and powerful. Moreover, the guys who are recommended are not all rich and powerful, so they are difficult to deal with. The master was talking incessantly, and Yuan seemed a little absent-minded. He held the paper and looked towards the entrance of the venue. At this moment, Zhang Xiao strode in with his apprentice. He looked at Li Haisheng and Yuanzi with a provocative smile on his face. Master Li, you two are here so early, do you want to see my new apprentice? Zhang Xiao stepped aside, revealing his disciple behind him. He is about the same age as Yuan's. He stood tall and straight, his eyes revealing the confidence that no one else could do it better than him, as if he was a rising star ready to take off. His appearance undoubtedly brought some ripples to this peaceful morning. Yuan's glanced at Zhang Xiao's new disciple. He was shocked at first, then his eyes seemed to be filled with fire. His body trembled involuntarily, as if some emotion deep in his heart was touched. Li Haisheng noticed his abnormality, pressed Yuan's with one hand, and then turned his head sideways with this arm as the center. Li Haisheng, nephew, my father really hopes that you will return to the clan. He says that it is a waste of your talent for you to be a teaching master here. Li Weiming glanced at Yuan's and didn't take him seriously at all. Well, since I am the strongest young man in the clan, it wouldn't be a waste of your talent if you teach me. Zhang Xiao's arrogance disappeared all of a sudden. He looked at the uncle and nephew timidly, fearing that they would reach such a cooperation. Are you worthy enough to learn from me? Li Haisheng turned his head back and asked with a very disdainful tone, and then he increased the strength of the hand on Yuan's shoulder. My apprentice is going to be admitted to the top class, he will definitely be able to defeat you. Let's wait and see. Li Weiming didn't hesitate and prepared to leave here with Zhang Xiao. That's right. Don't forget what you said just now. Don't let your disciple be beaten so badly that he won't even recognize you. Zhang Xiao's eyes flashed coldly and his tone became aggressive again, appearing very tough. Not long after the two left, Yuanzi, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke, but the angry Yuanzi didn't even use a respectful title. Why don't you let me talk about him? Didn't you teach me that a source warrior should speak his mind when faced with a problem? I really don't know why you are so angry, but you are not calm at all. Even if you use breathing techniques and ancient boxing techniques now, you can only end up in a draw at best. Moreover, this non-lethal fight is meaningless. Don't act on impulse and learn from what I did back then. Li Haisheng waved the lesson plan in one hand and pointed at Yuan's with the other, bursting into anger after a long time. Then just stop caring about me. I have to go my own way after all. Well, I have taught you for nothing for the past 10 years. However, the master and the apprentice had been together for 10 years after all, and they still trusted each other. After a quarrel, they finally sorted out the ins and outs of the matter. You should keep calm and not act rashly in the future. I know what to do. In the next few days, Yuanzi trained even harder. He no longer cared about the disturbances and provocations, and only focused on improving his own strength. The day before the assessment, at the end of the training, Li Haisheng handed Yuan's a pendant that was exactly the same as the blue bottle. This is the amulet I made. I didn't want to give it to you, but now there is no better way. You should pass the assessment of the top class first, and also win honor for your father. Yuan's took the pendant and looked at his master in confusion. It can temporarily increase your energy to the top level of the top class in critical moments. It will not overdraw your potential. But it has a side effect, which is that within about a year, your source power will only slowly fade away until it returns to its current level. I see. I understand. No, you don't understand. Li Haisheng became inexplicably agitated. He raised his head and seemed to be lost in painful memories. Do you know how painful this year will be for you? Can you understand the feeling of falling from the peak to the bottom? Yuanzi was silent. He stared at his master with determination in his eyes. I am willing to bear this price. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 7 Assessment I. The day of the assessment arrived as scheduled. The whole school is shrouded in a tense and busy atmosphere. The school gate was crowded with people, not only students but also parents who had deep expectations for their children. Their eyes revealed their desire for the future. Please note that students who have applied for the science and technology class please come back tomorrow to take the test. Today is the test time for the warrior class and the elite class. The school broadcast kept repeating this sentence, reminding students not to get the time wrong. Your child has applied for a regular class and can be admitted directly without taking any assessment. The inspectors skillfully examined the identities of the students and parents, and gave instructions while checking the list. Yuan's was preparing to squeeze into queue up and take a look at the people coming and going in the school. Yuan's found that contrary to the expectations of most parents, most students looked embarrassed and confused. This contrast made him feel that even on the path of martial arts, most people often find it difficult to find what they truly desire in their hearts. This is a common dilemma. Yuan's went through these difficulties, slowly crawled in front of the auditor in the queue, and took the initiative to submit his identity verification form. He saw a holographic identity information sheet automatically appear in front of the auditor, and the auditor meticulously compared the paper form he submitted with the contents of the holographic projection. Passed. Next one. Yuan's took the badge of No 1356 and the identity verification form and prepared to go to the examination room. But in the crowd, he unexpectedly heard a familiar voice. Even in the noisy environment, it was still so harsh and clear that Yuan's paused slightly. Li Haisheng didn't make an appointment for you to enter the VIP channel. It seems that my uncle is not doing very well. Li Weiming looked cynical. He sat on a velvet table in the distance, propped up his head with his elbows, and glanced at Yuan's. Yuanzi was about to explode, but he remembered what his master taught him, and the corners of his mouth turned up, revealing a hint of contempt. Let's see the truth on stage. Li Weiming restrained his lazy posture, sat up straight and looked directly at Yuan's. The two looked at each other, and their gazes collided fiercely, as if lightning was crackling in the air. Damn it, as long as we get into the top class, we can be like them. In the surging crowd where Yuan's was, someone shouted and the atmosphere became subtle. What qualifications do you civilians have to fight me? His voice was not loud, but it was clearly heard by everyone. The children of the rich and powerful began to sneer, their eyes full of arrogance and contempt. On one side are the scattered children of the powerful and wealthy, and on the other side are the surging crowds of people, as if they were two different worlds. At this time, on the other side of the examination room, the match-up table had been projected onto the wall. The crowd rushed over in an instant. Enemies often meet on a narrow road. Yuan's and Li Weiming are in the same examination room. The assessment method is special and rigorous, and all candidates are required to wear a special helmet. This helmet can detect the source power value of the candidates and enter their physical fitness data, which will be used as the basis for the initial round of scoring. The top 50% of candidates in source power will be awarded 50 points, and the bottom 50% will be awarded 30 points. Yuan's checked and put on his helmet as instructed, closed his eyes and thought about the details of the assessment. Both theory and actual combat will be tested in the virtual space. The actual combat test will simulate a real combat environment, randomly select candidates from the examination room to fight, and calculate the scores in real time. Finally, the top 128 students in all examination halls will enter the top class ranking battle, which will be played on the big screen. Quote, "Candidates, please lie down and wear helmets. The test will start in 5 minutes. A mechanical female voice came from the side of my ear. 5 minutes passed quickly, and Yuan's felt a strong sense of distortion coming, and Yuan's entered a virtual space. He completed all the questions quickly and accurately, showing a solid theoretical foundation. Then he sat upright in his seat, waiting for the next round of practical assessment. Following a flash of dazzlingly strong white light, Yuan's was instantly teleported to the outskirts of a vast primeval forest. In this forest, the trees are dense and continuous. Each tree stands quietly, with traces of time engraved on each piece of bark. The treetops interweave with each other, forming a continuous green sky, gently filtering the light from the outside, immersing the forest in a quiet and profound atmosphere, as if each tree has its own story and soul. The special combat assessment and survival assessment officially begins. A cold and mechanical voice rang in Yuan's ears, making him tense up instantly. To the surprise of most candidates, they were chosen for the special assessment item that had just been updated this year. Yuan's was not surprised at all because his master had already reminded him. The longer you survive and the more source beasts you kill, the higher your score will be. The conditions for obtaining additional points are to persist for 24 hours or obtain a small red flag. This assessment will not only face the threat of some source beasts and the shrinking outer safety zone, but more importantly, the backstabbing struggles between the candidates. The first test is the most difficult, Misty Forest. Yuan's frowned and kept thinking about the response strategy in his mind. This red flag must have been placed in the center of the most dangerous forest. It is unrealistic to expect to pass through as quickly as possible. We can only proceed steadily and explore deeper into the forest step by step. Yuanzi took a deep breath, adjusted himself, and then carefully stepped into the mysterious forest. He entered a sensory state called flow, an extreme state of concentration that allowed him to keenly perceive all the subtle changes around him during battle. Just as Yuanzi was concentrating on moving forward, his bracelet suddenly vibrated and a message jumped into his eyes. Candidate 037 failed the assessment, 0.5 points. A candidate failed so soon. Yuanzi was startled. He looked around but didn't find anything unusual. However, as time went by, more and more candidates failed in this cruel test. Yuan's cut off the information on the bracelet. He knew that he could not be distracted, and he could not take it lightly. He continued to maintain a high level of vigilance and concentration, exploring deeper into the forest step by step, with every nerve stretched to the extreme. Just as Yuanzi was concentrating on walking through the dark forest, he suddenly felt a fierce murderous aura coming from the front. He subconsciously dodged to the side, and saw a black shadow passing by where he was just now, and fiercely brushed past the big tree that he had just been standing behind. The source beast walked out from behind the tree. It was not as exaggeratedly large as other source beasts. It inherited the smooth lines of the leopard. Its fur was a strange dark gold color, revealing its identity. This is a black gold leopard that is extremely difficult to deal with. It has an extremely fast speed. Although it is the lowest apprentice level, it can at least be comparable to the awakened level in this deep environment. Yuan saw a bloodthirsty light flashing in its eyes and looked at him vigilantly. It obviously did not expect that Yuan's could dodge its fatal blow. Yuan's clenched his fists, lowered his waist, and did not dare to act rashly. A source beast that failed in an ambush would rarely continue to pursue, especially one that was not good at frontal combat. However, if it continued to attack, it would just be a good opportunity to hone itself by borrowing a source beast that was not good at frontal combat. Before Yuan's could sort out his thoughts, the black gold leopard roared and attacked Yuan's again. In Yuanzi's eyes, it was extremely fast, leaving only a dark golden shadow, but Yuanzi's reaction was no less. He nimbly dodged the continuous attacks of the source beast and continuously launched counterattacks. After all, it was a head-on battle, and Yuan's had already prepared for it. The speed that the black gold leopard was proud of was gradually adapted to by Yuan's, and it gradually lost its effect and became a high-intensity burden to it. Yuan's became more and more comfortable with his movements. The black gold leopard already had the instinct to flee and fear, but how could Yuan's miss its weakness? He punched the leopard's most vulnerable waist with heavy punches like a storm. The black gold leopard screamed and fell to the ground. Yuanzi showed no mercy and stepped on its head again, destroying its last bit of life. He looked around vigilantly and thought to himself, this environment simulation is quite realistic. It really gives me the feeling of a battle. Before Yuan's could breathe a sigh of relief, a rustling sound suddenly came from the surrounding bushes. Immediately afterwards, a group of strangely shaped transparent tentacles emerged from all directions, dragged away the body of the black gold leopard, and tightly wrapped around Yuan's. Breaking the dilemma. Chapter 8 Assessment 2. Damn, I was careless. Yuan's only felt a huge binding force coming from all directions. Those tentacles seemed to have endless suction power, sticking tightly to his body, making him almost unable to move. He tried to struggle free, but the flexibility and strength of these tentacles were beyond his imagination. Every time he struggled, it was like hitting an invisible wall, making him feel powerless. What on earth is this? Yuanzi wondered. He had never seen such a strange beast before. These tentacles seemed to have no substance. Only a vague outline could be seen in the sunlight shining through the trees, but they were able to restrain him. Wrapped in the tentacle monster's numerous thick tentacles, Yuanzi felt as if he was trapped in a cage from which he could not escape. Every time he struggled, the tentacles would only wrap around him more tightly, making it difficult for him to breathe. Why is this soft tentacle so powerful? Yuan suddenly had an idea and began to adjust his strategy. He no longer simply struggled hard, but tried to adjust his breathing rhythm, imagine himself as a pool of liquid, and relax his muscles. As his breathing rhythm changed, Yuanzi's body became more and more relaxed, allowing the tentacles to wrap around him tightly. He began to use his subtle sense of touch to sense the movement and power distribution of the tentacles. With the help of flow, Yuan's felt as if his consciousness had merged into the source power, and he could clearly sense its flow and changes. He gradually discovered the weaknesses of these tentacles. Inside the tentacles of this tentacle monster, the source force is in a liquid-fluid state, and the pressure on the enclosed liquid is equal in all directions. Using this principle, this source beast actually built a simple hydraulic system to achieve force amplification and transmission, which is why the tentacles are so powerful. However, it has a fatal flaw. Every so often, the flow of liquid source force becomes unsmooth, causing blockage points in the source force transmission that are similar to human acupuncture points. At this point, the fluid pressure drops or the flow rate slows down, affecting the distribution and transmission of force in the tentacles. He was delighted and began to try to use the internal energy formed by his own source power to attack those blocked points. He felt that his source power seemed to have turned into a stream, which could accurately penetrate the defenses of those tentacles and directly attack the source of their power. As he continued to attack, the blockages began to dissipate, and the tentacles' strength gradually weakened. Yuan's felt his body begin to relax, and the tentacles no longer tightly wrapped around him like before. He knew that he had found a way to defeat the hydraulic tentacle monster. So he continued to use his source power and breathing method to continuously attack those blocking points. As all the blocking points on a tentacle were destroyed, the tentacle monster's tentacles also disappeared. 1, 2, 3. Yuan's watched as countless tentacles collapsed and dissipated until all of them disappeared. Bursts of wailing were heard in the distance, and the huge body like a hill gradually disintegrated. He had some thoughts in his mind. This simulation environment is not a simple combat scenario, but a comprehensive test. It not only tests my combat ability, but also my observation, analysis and adaptability. Moreover, these are all related to some knowledge I have learned before. For example, the hydraulic tentacle monster just now was testing the ability to apply physics. After the screams of the hydraulic tentacle monster faded away, Yuanzi struggled to stand up. His clothes were soaked with sweat, and his body felt weak. But he knew that he couldn't stop like this. This test was only half an hour old and was far from over. As Yuan stood up, he saw a dart flying towards him. Yuan's tried his best to control his body and turned to avoid the dart. It's the last gasp of a dying force, that's for sure. Before he finished speaking, Yuanzi subconsciously turned around again, but was still half a beat late. The figure moved very quickly and was in front of Yuanzi in almost an instant. Yuanzi only had time to see a hint of ruthlessness in the other's eyes before he was knocked away by a huge force. Yuanzi fell heavily against the tree trunk and struggled to stand up again, but found that his body began to tremble uncontrollably. Not good. In order to deal with so many tentacles, his source of energy was almost exhausted, and he couldn't even maintain the flow state. Ha ha ha, is this the candidate who ranked first? His source power is so low, he really got a big bargain. Candidate No 0279 laughed loudly while standing in front of Yuanzi. Yuanzi was also very clear about the ranking rules. The defeated candidate would get his points. After the system determined that he had killed the hydraulic tentacle monster, he got a high score. The other party's intentions are obvious. Yuanzi immediately panicked and opened the holographic panel of the bracelet, wanting to click to exit the assessment. But No 0279 in front of Yuanzi was more anxious than him. He didn't want the cook duck to fly away like this, so he threw his whole body forward, trying to stop Yuanzi's action. No 0279 watched Yuanzi twist his upper body and stretch his arms into the distance, trying his best to avoid being disturbed, which made him even more anxious and he leaned forward even more. Just when number 0279 was about to lose his balance due to the large amplitude, he saw Yuanzi's sly smile and the dart in Yuanzi's hand. A trace of regret flashed through his mind, and he asked a soul-searching question. Is this also part of your plan? You're pretty smart, too. Yuanzi didn't leave him any chance and completely destroyed the center of gravity of his lower body with one kick. The dart carried Yuanzi's last source of strength and went straight into 279's forehead. In fact, Yuanzi had a premonition of this scene. When the battle with the hydraulic tentacle monster was about to end, he forced himself to use flow to the limit and found 0279 who was waiting nearby. The fatigue after the battle was real, but the panic was indeed fake. All of this was just a show for him so that he could have a chance to deliver a fatal blow. From the dart that he dodged and shot at the tree, to being knocked off the tree and being able to remove the dart silently, to finally luring him into revealing a flaw, this was indeed all part of Yuanzi's calculations. Yuanzi struggled to support his exhausted body, his eyes closely following No 0279, until the data fragments he turned into completely dissipated into nothingness. Yuanzi fell to the ground with a sense of relief. The joy of victory and the limit of the body came almost at the same time, making Yuanzi feel that even breathing was a luxury. Number 0279 has been defeated by No 1356 and obtained. The mechanical voice continued to report the results coldly and mercilessly, but Yuanzi was no longer able to pay attention to the subsequent rewards. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound near his ears, as if someone was approaching. Yuanzi subconsciously tried to prop up his body again, but his muscles had completely reached their limit and he could no longer respond. He tried hard to raise his heavy neck, trying to see the dark shadow in front of him. However, with his blurred vision, he only had time to catch a glimpse of a vague outline before he fell into a deep coma due to exhaustion. Chapter 9 Assessment. Yuanzi's consciousness floated slowly in the darkness, gradually breaking free from the entanglement of memories and returning to reality. His consciousness gradually returned, and he felt that he was lying on the cold ground, surrounded by a dark forest. He glanced at the bracelet and didn't expect that only 10 hours had passed. It seemed that the time in virtual reality was compressed, and even the flow of time in dreams became abnormal. Just 10 hours seemed like several months. Yuanzi lay quietly on the ground, letting his thoughts wander on the border between reality and memory. Warm and sweet moments, fierce confrontations, and the final glory of victory flashed through his mind one by one. However, these memories seemed incomplete, and his brain was filled with trivial and messy fragments of information, as if he had experienced several completely different events that strangely converged at the end. This illusion of blending reality and fantasy made Yuanzi feel an indescribable confusion and mystery. Just as he was immersed in this chaos, a sudden panic struck him. He found that he could not move at all. This feeling was so real, as if an invisible force bound him tightly in this dark forest. Is there a new enemy appearing? Yuanzi speculated secretly in his heart and tried hard to break free from this feeling of powerlessness, but his body did not obey him at all. Not likely. Let's just pretend to be dead first. At this moment, he sensed a figure in front of him slowly walking towards him. Due to his declining body functions and blurred vision, Yuanzi was unable to see the other person's face clearly and could only determine from the outline that the other person was a human. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. Who is this person? Why is he here? As the opponent approached, Yuanzi felt a strong sense of oppression. If the opponent was an enemy, he would not be able to resist the attack. However, to Yuanzi's surprise, the other party did not attack him, but squatted down and stretched out his hand to feel his pulse. Yuanzi was confused. What is he doing? Sure enough, after making sure that Yuanzi was still alive, a voice whispered in his ear, "You can't pretend to be dead in the virtual space. I'm the one protecting you during this time." This sentence was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples in Yuanzi's heart. Hearing this, Yuanzi's doubts grew even stronger. He tried hard to ask about the other party's identity and purpose, but his mouth seemed to be blocked by something and he could not make a sound. The other party seemed to see Yuanzi's confusion and uneasiness, and his tone revealed a reassuring power. "Don't worry, I am the guardian here. You defeated No 0279 before and performed very well. But your body is seriously overdrawn and urgently needs treatment." After that, the other party took out a syringe from his body and prepared to inject Yuanzi with a drug. Although Yuanzi could not move, he was very conscious. He struggled in his heart. Who is this person? Should I trust him? However, in this situation, he seemed to have no better choice, so he chose to believe the other party, closed his eyes, and waited for the injection of the medicine. As the medicine was injected, Yuanzi felt a warm current spreading rapidly in his body. His limbs gradually regained strength and his consciousness became clearer. When he opened his eyes again, he found that he was able to sit up. Is there such a system for assessment in virtual space? Yuanzi was a little confused, but thanked him anyway. It's what I should do. If you can leave, do so quickly. Remember not to mention this to anyone. The man quickly turned his back and blocked his face. Yuanzi bowed several times towards his lonely figure and left quickly. After Yuanzi left, the guardian slowly turned around, a cigarette still dangling from the corner of his mouth, looking in the direction where Yuanzi left, muttering to himself, "I wonder who this child who took the amulet is." He looked like a tall, thin and upright young man, but if Yuanzi took a quick look, he would definitely recognize him, because he looked exactly like Master Yuanzi 10 years ago. Haha, my mission is over. I don't know how I am doing now. 10 years ago, Li Haisheng picked up the amulet in his hand and looked at it carefully, with tears in his eyes. But his body gradually disintegrated into codes of 0s and 1s. It's a pity that I haven't finished this cigarette yet. On the other side, Yuanzi, who had already walked far away, felt the source power in his body surging like a tide, but he was surprised to find that the amulet given to him by his master also disappeared silently. It seems that the power of the amulet has been absorbed by me. He thought to himself that this might be the secret to passing the test mentioned by his master. I can't slack off, Yuanzi said to himself. In the following examination, Yuanzi showed amazing strength. Whether it was the candidates who tried to attack him by surprise or the low-level monsters, they were all vulnerable in front of him with abundant source power. The speed of his advancement is astonishing. Yuanzi pulled up the ranking list and showed a hint of disdain. Li Weiming, who was in second place, was already far behind. Even if he chose to withdraw, he could still hold on to the first place. However, Yuanzi was not satisfied with this. He continued to go deeper into the core area of the forest, looking for the final challenge. There were only a few candidates left, and there were only 2 hours left. He clearly remembered what his master had said. This special assessment would have special rewards, but the prerequisite was that he had to stay for the full time and find the little red flag. This is his goal now. So he calmed his mind and began to search carefully for clues around him. You have to know that after rounds of screening and elimination, the candidate's concealment ability has reached the limit of what they can do, making this forest even more quiet and mysterious. Only the breath of those high-level source beasts occasionally floats in the air, as if telling of unknown dangers. Yuanzi was like a cheetah, shuttling through the forest. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle, not missing any possible clues. Time passed by, and his heartbeat gradually accelerated with each fruitless search. At this moment, a faint red light flashed in his sight. With an idea in his mind, he quickly chased in that direction. After passing through a dense bush, he finally saw the hidden red flag. Yuanzi was not in a hurry to take action, as he didn't know how many people were waiting for the first bird to come forward. What all the candidates who were hiding did not expect was that this outspoken bird would be so arrogant. Li Weiming looked around and strode towards the small red flag, ready to grab it. However, just as he was about to touch the small red flag, several weak breath fluctuations caught his attention. I am Li Weiming, the heir of the Li family. If you want to make enemies with my family, just come on. I am not afraid of you. Mr. Li, I'm Yiyang. I'll leave first. A thin figure walked out from the bushes, bowed respectfully, and withdrew from the assessment. Then, one breath after another gradually turned into data and withdrew from the assessment, not wanting to offend him or lose face. It seems that you all are very appreciative. Li Weiming smiled. It seemed that the small box his father mentioned was already in his pocket. Just as he was about to take the small red flag, he turned his head and saw only a dense bush swaying gently in the wind, which seemed to be normal. However, Li Weiming was startled and felt a strong sense of crisis. "Who? Come out," he shouted, trying to intimidate the opponent hiding in the dark. However, the only response he got was silence. "It's me." A clear female voice came from the bushes. She was wearing camouflage and holding a dagger as she walked towards Li Weiming. It turns out to be the girl from the Ji family. Li Weiming recognized the girl. She was the daughter of the Ji family and one of the few candidates who were qualified to compete with him in this assessment. "Li Weiming, do you think you can scare away everyone with the name of the Li family? That's ridiculous." The girl sneered and said sarcastically. "Why is it Ji Xueren? When did she become so strong?" Yuan's was very puzzled. His deskmate had never been ambitious and was only keen on painting. How could she have broken into the core area? Yuan's watched the confrontation between the two while looking at the little time left. "Keep calm and don't act rashly." Yuan's repeated in his mind the words his master taught him. 60, 59, 58. The countdown sounded. The two finally couldn't hold back anymore and started fighting. Just when the two were fighting fiercely, Yuan seized the opportunity, burst out with unprecedented speed, and snatched the little red flag from the hands of the two. Before the two could react, Yuan's took the opportunity to slap Li Weiming on the face a few times. "Yuan Zi." The two of them shouted in unison. Ji Xueren was also puzzled as to how this classmate could be so powerful. She had said before that she would protect him, but it was better for him to take it away than for Li Weiming to take it away. Li Weiming covered his face, which was swollen like a pig's head, looked at him, and then noticed his number. Anger seemed to burst out from his eyes. "So the first place, no 1356, is you. Why not?" As time passed, another flash of white light passed, and the consciousness of all the candidates gradually returned to reality. The young man whose ideals were shattered 10 years ago helped his apprentice 10 years later. Chapter 10 Top Class Selection. Yuan's let out a long sigh. He finally got the special reward that his master had mentioned. He would go back and ask his master what it was for. Bang! In the examination room, there was a particularly abrupt sound of a heavy object hitting the ground. Yuan's looked in the direction of the sound and saw Li Weiming angrily throwing the expensive helmet to the ground, then rushing towards him with big strides. "What kind of cheating did you use?" Li Weiming's eyes widened, and he grabbed Yuan's collar and asked angrily, "How could you get first place?" Everyone in the examination room watched as the number on Yuan's chest changed from 1356 to 001, and then saw that Li Weiming's number changed from 0001 to 002, and they immediately understood what was going on. Yuan's face darkened instantly. He suppressed his anger and said coldly, "I don't want to repeat it a second time. Please let go of your hand." There was a dangerous gleam in his eyes. If he had not been in the examination room, he would have wanted to compete with Li Weiming to wash away the humiliation suffered by his father. But a lack of patience will ruin a great plan, so now is not the time to take action. Li Weiming felt a little guilty under Yuan's cold gaze, but he still let go of his hand unwillingly, but he kept on nagging, "You're lucky. When you get out of this examination room, you'll see what happens." "We'll see." After saying that, he took his new little brother Yiyang and left, not forgetting to turn around and glare at Yuan's, as if he wanted to save some face in this way. Unfortunately, in Yuan's eyes, he was just a clown who didn't learn his lesson. Let's think about the afternoon assessment. The next assessment adopts a 1v1 round-robin match. In the first round, each person will randomly encounter 63 players. The last 64 students will be eliminated first, and then the remaining 64 will enter the second round of top-class ranking competition. So, Yuan's opened the list of the top 128 and saw many familiar faces in the first round, including his two good brothers, Hekin in 7th place and Halma in 15th place, Ji Xueren, his deskmate from last semester in 4th place, Li Weiming in 2nd place and Yiyang in th place. It seems that the round-robin system does make sense, Yuanzi said to himself, otherwise it would be a pity to draw Hekin in the first round. Just as he was thinking about countermeasures, Halma suddenly appeared from the side, put his arm around Yuan's shoulders, and laughed. "Ha ha ha, brother, you are really good. You hid your strength for so long, and even didn't tell us. Now Hekin is finished." Poo, poo. Ida not a single elimination system. I really want to try my hand at Yuanzi, who is the first one to play, to see who is better between us, but don't show mercy. Hekin also walked in from the classroom next door, his eyes flashing with anticipation. Definitely. Hekin's parents are both famous source beast hunters, and he has been eager for battle since he was a child. Although he is an out-and-out battle maniac, Hekin's mind is also the calmest among the three, and he will never lose his mind because of a momentary impulse. "Let's go eat first. I'll pay the bill." The bear man was indeed very generous. Yuan's and Hekin looked at each other. Of course, they didn't want to miss the opportunity to make a fortune, but having a big meal to celebrate at this time was a bit like opening champagne in advance, which was a bit too early. In the evening, let's keep it simple at noon. No problem. After lunch, they wandered around the school bragging for a while, then went into their respective examination rooms to prepare for the next test. The assessment begins. The first match is between number 001 Yuanzi and No. 007 He Can. As the mechanical sound rang in Yuan's ears again, Yuan's entered the virtual space again, and the 64 duels were being projected on the big screen in the school. In the virtual space, Yuanzi and He Can stood opposite each other. Neither of them rushed to take action, but stared at each other quietly, trying to read something from each other's eyes. They are so familiar with each other that they can understand each other's every look and every move. But because of this, they also know that this game will not be a quick decision. Boom! A loud noise broke the silence, and He Can took the lead in launching an attack. His figure flashed through the void like a flash of lightning, and in an instant he was in front of Yuanzi, punching him in the chest. Yuanzi was well prepared. He dodged He Can's attack with a flash of his body and punched He Can's back. However, He Can's reaction speed was equally amazing. He twisted his body in the nick of time and dodged Yuanzi's counterattack. The two of them go back and forth, trying to show off their tricks at each other's turn. The judges and referees in the audience were dazzled and amazed. Even the passers-by were looking forward to watching the exciting duel. They knew that this was a true peak showdown, and no matter who won or lost, they would become the best in the top class. In the center of the battlefield, the battle between Yuanzi and He Can has entered a white-hot stage. They have forgotten the time and fatigue, and have only one thought in their minds, to defeat the opponent. Yuanzi suddenly burst out with a strong momentum. He took a deep breath, and then punched He Can fiercely. This punch contained all his strength and will, as if he wanted to smash everything in front of him. A trace of solemnity flashed across He Can's eyes. He knew that he couldn't take this punch head-on. So, he flashed and showed amazing speed again, trying to avoid Yuanzi's fatal blow. However, the power of Yuanzi's punch was too great. Even though He Can dodged most of the attack, he was still hit on the shoulder by the punch. He felt a huge force coming, and the whole person flew out in an instant as if he was hit by a high-speed train. Bang! He Can fell heavily to the ground, and blood spilled out. But he did not give up, but struggled to stand up, with a determined light in his eyes. He knew that he had not lost yet, and as long as he had a breath left, there was a possibility of a comeback. Yuanzi looked at He Can, who stood up again, and he couldn't help but feel a little respect in his heart. He knew that He Can was a true warrior, and he would never give up until the last moment. Come on, continue. Yuan stretched out a hand and hooked it towards He Can. The winner must be me. He Can wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and grinned. That depends on whether you have the ability. Before he finished speaking, He Can moved again. This time, his attack was more fierce and swift, as if he was pouring out all his strength. Yuanzi was not to be outdone. He faced the challenge head-on and started a more intense battle with He Can. The two figures flashed quickly in the virtual space, and every collision caused a loud noise. The audience was so excited that they forgot that this was just an entrance examination. They shouted and cheered loudly, cheering for this ultimate showdown. The judges in the audience seemed to have forgotten the other 63 battles and were focused on the brotherly battle between Yuan's and He Can. Especially the old man in white robe, who was the special judge, had a look of envy in his eyes, but a closer look revealed that it was more of a fanatical emotion. However, as time went by, He Can and Yuanzi both had varying degrees of injuries on their bodies. Their breathing became rapid, and their movements gradually became slower. But even so, they still had no intention of giving up. They gritted their teeth and tried their best to continue to fight with their opponents. Finally, after a fierce battle, He Can showed a tiny flaw. Yuanzi seized this opportunity and punched He Can in the chest, knocking him to the ground. Boom! He Can's body hit the ground hard, raising a cloud of dust. He lay there, motionless, as if he had lost consciousness. Yuan stood there, panting, looking at He Can, who was lying on the ground. He knew that he had won the battle. But at the same time, he also knew that this victory was not easy to come by. He walked to He Can and stretched out his hand to pull him up. But at this moment, He Can suddenly opened his eyes, grabbed Yuanzi's wrist, and suddenly turned over and stood up. Ha ha ha. He Can laughed loudly, but his body gradually became digital. Good job, Yuan's. You really didn't let me down. It was really enjoyable this time. You are also amazing, He Can. The two smiled at each other, then hugged each other tightly. Time passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, the second round of ranking competition came to an end. Yuan's ranked first with an impressive record of 124 wins and 2 losses, more than 10 wins higher than the second-place Li Weiming. What a pity. I shouldn't have agreed to compete with the hairy bear man in pure strength. Now that he has defeated 2 brothers in a row, it will be enough for him to brag for a while. Yuanzi recalled the defeat and actually laughed. I didn't beat Li Weiming hard enough. I don't feel satisfied. However, when everyone was looking forward to the final peak showdown, the result was unexpected. Yuan suddenly burst out with a powerful momentum for some reason and quickly defeated Li Weiming with a crushing force. The battle was short and fierce, and Yuan's strong performance amazed everyone. Only one person, Yi Yang, remained calm and watched the so-called peak battle. At this time, the three of them were celebrating in the restaurant that all of them had entered the top class, and the three of them did not separate in their last year of high school. Is there really a banquet that will never end? Chapter 11 Genetic Programming Technology. What are you pawning at the pawn shop? Mr. Yang, it's me. Master Haisheng, I haven't seen you for more than 10 years, but you still haven't forgotten me. Mr. Yang, please stop calling me young master. After so many years, I am no longer the child I was back then. If it weren't for what happened back then, I would have called you master. Who knows? Mr. Yang, you can't say that. Li Haisheng, smoking a cigarette, leaned against the counter and interrupted him. No one comes to visit you for no reason. What are you doing here this time? In the shadows, an old face with wrinkles like a walnut shell poked out. His eyes were as sharp as a knife in the past, and there was a sly smile at the corners of his mouth, as if hiding many untold stories. Li Haisheng looked at this familiar yet unfamiliar face, and a complex emotion surged in his heart. This old man had witnessed too much of his past and also carried too many of his memories. Remember this thing, right? Li Haisheng threw a small box to him with one hand, not caring whether the elderly Yang could catch it. Old Yang's eyes, which were as sharp as the old blades, flashed slightly, and he steadily caught the small box thrown by Li Haisheng. His old hands gently stroked the surface of the box, as if he was recalling the past years. This box. Elder Yang's voice trembled a little, as if his deep memory was touched. Of course I remember it. This is the relic your father left for you. Open to take a look. Li Haisheng didn't say anything, put out the half-smoked cigarette, and looked at old Yang quietly. He knew that this old man was one of the few people he could trust in this world. Old Yang slowly opened the box a crack, a trace of astonishment flashed across his calm face, but his voice revealed a trace of vicissitudes and helplessness. Are you here to see me because of what happened that year? Li Haisheng shook his head. I just want to exchange for something I need. Elder Yang closed the lid and looked at the list handed over by Li Haisheng. He was silent for a long time, then slowly exhaled. This is the best. I will help you this time for the sake of the elder. But you have to remember that some things are over and done with. No matter what the result is, don't be obsessed with it. Li Haisheng didn't say anything, but just nodded silently. Let's go, the auction is about to start. Wait a minute, I'll take my apprentice to broaden his horizons. Yuan Zi, it seems you haven't forgotten your old job, intelligence chief. What kind of intelligence is this? Everyone in the martial arts school knows that you are good to them. You will know it just by chatting with them. Quote. The two people who hadn't seen each other for a long time chatted for a while waiting, and Yuan's figure gradually appeared in their sight. It's almost too late. Old Yang teleported to Yuan's, picked him up, then teleported again to the door of the house and stepped into the portal in front. Li Haisheng thought about it and felt that this method was very good and could save a lot of trouble. Yuan seemed to be stunned by the fall, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. He subconsciously knocked his head, feeling like he was dreaming. He stood up and looked around, and found himself in a spacious and gorgeous room. The golden decorations and bright lights set off the luxurious atmosphere of the room, which made him sigh. You guys. Yuan's turned to look at Mr. Yang and Li Haisheng beside him, very curious. This is the VIP room of the auction. Li Haisheng, wearing a mask, explained, please wear your mask and talk less. Just as Yuan's put on his mask, a man in elegant clothes appeared in the room. He saluted respectfully to Elder Yang and said slowly, Elder Son, why didn't you report in advance? We haven't cleaned up here yet. Manager Kong, it's okay. I have an urgent item to give to you. The man took the small box and looked at the small piece of object inside carefully, feeling a little confused. This is a genetically programmed chip. Gene programming. The man repeated. Mr. Sun, you are kidding me. As far as I know, this is an extremely rare technology. There are only a few people in the world who are capable of realizing it. Yes, it can temporarily change the genetic sequence of organisms to achieve various purposes, such as increasing strength, increasing speed, improving comprehension, etc. Elder Yang smiled and explained, it is also the only chip that can be directly integrated into the body and driven by source power to directly control it. Mr. Sun, are you serious? I guarantee it with my life. After hearing this, the man's eyes flashed with shock. He looked at the small box again, as if he saw endless possibilities and business opportunities. He took a deep breath, tried to calm down his excitement, and then nodded solemnly, okay, Mr. Sun, I understand. We will immediately arrange for experts to evaluate this chip and determine a reasonable starting price. Mr. Yang nodded slightly, expressing his satisfaction. He knew that this man was the general manager of the Kong family auction house and had a keen insight into the value and market of the auction items. Handing the chip to him, Mr. Yang was relieved. Yuan's, who was standing aside, watched a group of experts with a large number of instruments surrounding the small chip, exclaiming in amazement from time to time, which made Yuan's very curious. "Master, what is the box that Mr. Sun took out?" Yuan's quietly typed a message to Li Haisheng. "That's Mr. Yang. Mr. Sun is his pseudonym when he travels around. That box is the one you brought back from the assessment. It's only been a month and you forgot about it." "I know. I mean the genetic programming chip in the box. It's just garbage. It's a product from 10 years ago anyway." "You speak as if you know the technology of genetic programming. Why can't I? Then why are you still here as a teacher at the martial arts school? Besides, you can't possibly ask me to go through so much trouble just to pick out some garbage." Li Haisheng burst out laughing and was speechless for a moment. He stopped staring at the chat interface and turned to look at Yuan's. He couldn't say that the box was more important to him and was much more valuable than the chip. "Next time I'll get you one that's a million times better than this one. It's a deal." Yuan's added a dog head at the end. Then, the two ended their conversation and turned their attention to Mr. Yang's side. The equipment had been moved away, leaving only an expert and manager Kong. After discussing, the two came up with the answer. "Mr. Sun, this item is so precious that it is not an exaggeration to say that it is an epic-making revolutionary product, so we have some ideas." "Speak directly." Manager Kong took over the conversation and replied respectfully, "It is like this, Mr. Sun. Due to the extremely high rarity of this item, we need to notify other interested guests, so the auction may need to be postponed for a while. Also, our family is very interested in this genius who created the gene programming chip. Could you introduce him to me?" Hearing this, Mr. Yang turned his gaze to Li Haisheng next to him. The two exchanged glances, and Mr. Yang immediately understood what Li Haisheng meant. "No need." Elder Yang waved his hand and said calmly, "He has no interest in your family. This is the starting price I set. See if it's appropriate." Manager Kong glanced at the list and showed a meaningful expression, 10 kilograms of ultra-high purity source silicon wafers. The current price for this item alone is over 3,000 million Chinese yuan, not to mention the other materials and equipment, which are all hot items in major laboratories and are not easy to get. If it were easy to find, I wouldn't need to look for you, right? Old Yang also responded with an intriguing expression. It seems that Mr. Sun also wants to build a laboratory for fun. Manager Kong smiled and stopped asking questions. Okay, the starting price is 100 million Chinese yuan. After the auction fee and the money for the items on the list will be deducted. The remaining money will be paid in cash as usual. Make a deal. Pleasant to work with. After Manager Kong left, the VIP room fell into a brief silence, and it was Li Haisheng who broke the silence first. "Mr. Yang, do you think they will come? You still want to fish here? Those guys have always been interested in human hide technology and should not be absent." Only Yuan seemed like an outsider. As he watched all these scenes, he felt a strong curiosity in his heart. He knew that he was able to participate in a transaction of this level entirely thanks to Li Haisheng. Yuan's thought that this was what his master meant by broadening his horizons. You know, the current Jigsaw City can provide Yuan's family with a good living with 10,000 yuan a year. But then, Li Haisheng handed a pair of glasses to Yuan's. "Put on these perspective glasses and gain real experience." Yuan slowly put on his glasses and his eyes penetrated the VIP room. His eyes suddenly froze and a shocked expression appeared on his face, as if he had seen something unbelievable. He took off his glasses and turned to look at Li Haisheng, only to find that Li Haisheng's face was as calm as water, as if he had already anticipated Yuan's reaction. "Master." Yuan's was about to ask, but was stopped by Li Haisheng's eyes. Elder Yang at the side also showed a complicated expression. "It's an unspoken secret." Chapter 12 The trash that was auctioned off. See this. Li Weiming stood on the high platform in front of the playground and raised his right arm. In the sunlight, the small square on the back of his hand flashed red light, and under the skin, there seemed to be a string of complex and mysterious data codes flowing along the entire arm. He looked around, his face full of pride and arrogance, as if the whole world was at his feet. "Look carefully, everyone." He raised his arm deliberately to make the chip shine more brightly. "This is not the crappy stuff with side effects that you usually see. This is a top-level genetically programmed chip, worth more than 200 million. With it, I am invincible." As soon as Li Weiming finished speaking, his classmates cast envious glances at him. Some were amazed at the advanced technology of the chip, some were shocked at the financial strength of Li Weiming's family, and some lamented the gap between the poor and the powerful. Amid the discussions of his classmates, Li Weiming felt extremely satisfied and proud. He enjoyed the feeling of being sought after and envied, and the sense of superiority that came from looking down on the common people. Amid everyone's admiration and envy for Li Weiming, Yuan's always remains low-key. Yuan's leaned against the tree beside the playground, watching Li Weiming showing off with interest, with a subtle smile on his face. Yuan shifted his gaze to his arms. He pulled open the sleeve of his left hand, which was still wrapped in tight bandages. This reminded Yuan's of the surgery last month. Yuan's was invited by Li Haisheng to a very hidden underground laboratory on the edge of the mechanical city. This basement was built under the half-abandoned building. Come here and lie down on it. What are these? Yuan's didn't rush over. He leaned against the glass and looked at the instruments. You look down on your master, don't you? Do you think I don't have genetic programming technology? What? Being a master in a martial arts school is just my hobby. This is my main job. Li Haisheng showed his smug, villain, face for the first time in a long time. His expression seemed to be provoking Yuan's and asking him if he had anything else to say. This time it was Yuan's turn to laugh. He originally thought that his master was joking with him, but he didn't expect that he would be the one to be slapped in the face. However, Yuan soon became a different person, and came over shamelessly. My dear master, 2 months ago you promised me that you would make me one that is 1,000,000 times better than the one at auction, right? My dear master, you are the one who keeps your word. Don't try this, it's really disgusting. Li Haisheng pushed Yuan's away slightly, motioning him to lie on the operating table, and then the instrument by the window automatically popped out a piece of material that was slightly larger than the previous one. Is this the new model? It doesn't look much different from the previous one. What do you know? Experts look at the doorway, while laymen join in the fun. I have been thinking about and perfecting this architecture for almost 10 years, until I saw a paper some time ago that said there had been a breakthrough in the process theory, so I was able to come up with it. The performance. The overall performance of genetic programming is probably 3,210% of what it was before, and the source power consumption is only 3.12% of what it was before. As for the processing speed, Li Haisheng called up the holographic screen and read the data displayed on it. Yuan's roughly calculated the data and exclaimed, "This is too powerful." It turns out that Moore's law is effective here again. If the technology hadn't lagged behind my ideas, Moore's law would have been renamed Haisheng's law. Li Haisheng smiled brightly. It's so happy to do what you like. Then you are still a martial arts master. Something happened in the family. Li Haisheng put away his smile, but there was no other emotional fluctuation. Be prepared, it might hurt a little. No anesthesia. We need to connect the nerves, so we can't use anesthesia. This little pain should be nothing to you, but just in case, let's do it this way. Li Haisheng clapped his hands, and the surrounding instruments tied Yuan's tightly to the bed. Damn it. Then, the robotic arm began to operate skillfully. As Yuan's felt a sharp pain, the skin on the back of his hand was accurately cut by the laser into a square slightly larger than the chip. Then the blood vessels, muscles, and bones in the square area were peeled off bit by bit to create space for installing the chip. The robotic arm placed the chip in the hole in Yuan's left hand, perfectly embedding it into the back of Yuan's hand. Then, light golden lines extended along the arm to the entire body, cleverly connecting with every nerve along the way. Gradually, after the chip completed the connection with all the nerves, it began to automatically mobilize the source power in Yuan's body to restore the stripped tissue. A little bit of flesh and blood, a little bit of bone gradually covered the chip inside. With the final recovery of the skin, the chip was completely buried in Yuan's flesh and blood, and only the golden light could be vaguely seen seeping out. Finally, the robotic arm tightly wrapped the surgical site with a special energy bandage. It seems that the surgical process still needs to be improved. Li Haisheng called up the holographic screen to record the surgical footage and took notes of his experience below the video. Okay, how do you feel? Li Haisheng also released the restraints. Yuan's was sweating profusely, which was a strong reaction to the severe pain. He got off the bed, first swung his left hand around his wrist a few times, then jumped around his whole body a few times, but he didn't feel any discomfort at all. He looked at his master in confusion. I don't feel anything, is there something wrong? That means the operation was successful and the chip has been perfectly integrated into your body. During this month, the chip will collect and analyze your body data and make adaptive changes. This is its most powerful new function. After a month, the bandage will automatically disintegrate and you will find out what it is useful for. Li Haisheng paused, and pulled up a piece of experimental data on the holographic screen. Look, this chip can effectively alleviate the decline in your source power after using the amulet, and it can also greatly shorten the duration of the side effects. Combined with your training intensity, according to theoretical calculations, the decline in your source power will last for a maximum of 2 months, which means you have almost 4 months to prepare for the college entrance examination. So, the piece that was sold for 250 million is just garbage, and the person who bought it was a complete idiot. Thinking of his master's words, Yuan's couldn't help but burst out laughing. This inappropriate laughter was so harsh in everyone's ears, and Li Weiming also turned his gaze to Yuan's. Yi Yang led the way and pushed aside the crowd around him, but the others were also tactful and took the initiative to make way for Li Weiming. You look so poor, yet you still laugh at me. Li Weiming approached Yuan's, suddenly turned around, opened his arms and shouted at the crowd who had just gathered, don't be afraid of him. Li, have a piece of news for you. This guy's energy has been declining. He is no longer worthy of staying in our top class. He is just trash. Then, Li Weiming suddenly turned his head and said to Yuan's provocatively, really? But it's enough to deal with you. Yuan said coldly, catching Li Weiming off guard. He's very courageous, but his lack of vision is obvious. Yi Yang sighed silently beside him. Li Weiming's other friends all looked at Yuan's and laughed until they cried. You're such a fool. I don't even need a chip to deal with you. What a big tone you have, you defeated General. I'm afraid you won't succeed. Chapter 13 True Strength. As soon as Li Weiming finished speaking, the students around him immediately burst into heated discussions. They whispered to each other, their eyes showing deep doubts about Yuanzi. In their minds, Yuanzi might have been high and mighty. But now, Yuan seemed to have become a laughingstock who could only show off his bravery and lacked foresight. They shook their heads and sighed, as if they had witnessed Yuan's inevitable defeat in advance. As the discussions grew, the students who were watching stepped back consciously, leaving a clear space for the two. Mr. Li is sure to win. The gap in strength nowadays is huge. Someone in the crowd said confidently to the classmate next to him. HMPH, don't speak too soon. Someone behind him retorted disapprovingly. Who said that? The man was about to argue, but suddenly turned around and saw Hyalma standing behind him. He immediately chose to remain silent. Obviously, neither side is someone he can easily provoke. He can look at this scene and couldn't help but shake his head gently. How can someone who just goes with the flow be considered a true martial artist? The cold wind was still biting, tugging at the two men's clothes, making rustling sounds. The two men rushed towards each other at the same time. Their fight was so fast that it dazzled all the students present. Even many students in the top classes could not fully see the movements of the two men. Li Weiming was under a lot of pressure. Having been in a pampered environment for a long time, he had not encountered many real confrontations. Most people stopped at the appropriate time due to his status. However, Li Weiming's reputation is not in vain. He is quite capable and good at finding opportunities. He forced Yuanzi to retreat many times, causing the people around him to cheer and shout. It is not difficult to see that Li Weiming still did not take the game seriously and preferred to enjoy the cheers from outside the stadium, but these cheers still distracted him. Yuan seized the opportunity and knocked Li Weiming to the ground with a palm, stopping the cheers of those people, leaving only the whistling cold wind. This palm strike made Li Weiming sober up. This kid Yuan's even surpassed him in some aspects. If it weren't for the decline of my source power, I would not be his opponent at all. But judging from the strength of that palm strike, I only lost some face, and there was no actual damage. When Li Weiming got serious, he was still very difficult to deal with, and the two had another tough battle. The longer the time goes, the more serious the problem of Yuan's lack of physical energy will be. He frowned and quietly told Harma about his discovery. What should I do? Make an emergency plan. We can't let Yuan's get seriously injured. He Kan's eyes accidentally met Yi Yang's, and Yi Yang seemed to be warning them not to act rashly. As close friends, they hope Yuanzi can win, but the current situation is so unfavorable that stopping the fight is a bad idea. Li Weiming also discovered this. Although his chances of winning increased with time, he heard the cheers around him becoming smaller and smaller with time. How could I not cheer? Thinking this way, Li Weiming activated the genetic programming chip anyway. With a burst of dazzling red light, the admiring voices from the people around him became louder. Everyone seemed to have forgotten that he had said that he would not activate the chip. The noise around seemed to be anticipating Yuan's defeat, which made Li Weiming excited again. However, Yuan's discovered that the red electronic circuits only covered the right half of Li Weiming's body. It seemed that his master was right. This was a semi-finished product that could not cover the entire body and mobilize the source power of the whole body. But it is the master's masterpiece after all. The power and speed that can be exerted at once are greatly improved, and the consumption of source power will be reduced to a very low level. It is impossible to deal with it by relying on skills alone. We have to change our strategy. We can only continue to push Li Weiming into a corner, or wait for him to show his weakness. Yuanzi also saw where the satisfaction he felt after activating the chip came from. Yuanzi used flow to tighten the consumption of source energy and switched to a more thorough defensive stance. Li Weiming became even more anxious when he saw that Yuanzi did not lose as he expected. Therefore, he decided to overclock the chip to the maximum output power and adjust the combat power to the maximum. Suddenly, his figure became blurred, as if he turned into a flash of lightning, and shuttled freely on the playground. Each attack was with the force of thunder, as if he wanted to completely destroy Yuanzi. However, even with such a powerful attack, Yuanzi still could not defeat him in one fell swoop. With the help of flow, Yuanzi could see through almost all of Li Weiming's intentions and could accurately avoid his attacks most of the time. However, once the super powerful attack hits, Yuanzi must use a large amount of source power to resist and recover. Under Li Weiming's overclocking attack, Yuanzi gradually fell into a slump, and the attacks he suffered became more and more frequent, causing Yuanzi to retreat one after another. He never showed any intention of giving up, but he and Hyalma on the side became a little impatient and emerged from the crowd, trying to stop the fight. "What do you want to do?" Yi Yang also came to the field and stopped the two. The sudden change made the eyes of the audience around light up. There was new gossip and the voices of discussion became louder. "Who dares to stop me?" The impatient Halma tried to use his strength to knock Yi Yang away, but his strength was as weak as hitting cotton. He immediately cooperated with Halma to attack his lower body, but he did not move at all, as steady as a rock. "I'm sorry, my friend." Although Yi Yang's voice was low, the two could hear a hint of helplessness in it. Then he and Halma fell heavily on the grass, temporarily losing their combat effectiveness. The speed was so fast that it even surpassed that of Li Weiming, who was in overclocked state. No one present except Yi Yang himself could see clearly what happened. No one expected that Yi Yang, ranked 5th, would instantly defeat the 3rd and 4th. Everyone around fell silent at once. At this moment, something strange happened. Yuanzi, who had been suppressed, had golden lines appearing from his left hand to his entire body. Suddenly, a golden light burst out, forcing back Li Weiming's offensive momentum. The bandage on Yuanzi's hanging left hand gradually broke apart, and a square area gradually appeared, flashing with dazzling light, drowning out the red light on Li Weiming's body. Then the golden light gradually spread to Yuanzi's body, and was clearly visible on the skin exposed by the torn clothes. Then, the light gradually retreated, and only by looking carefully could the circuit and shape of the chip be vaguely seen. It's obviously more advanced than Li Weiming's. This was the first thought in everyone's mind, but no one dared to speak. When Li Weiming saw this, he knew that he had already lost face in front of everyone, not to mention that the side effects of overclocking were gradually getting stronger. He might not win if he continued to fight, which would only make him more embarrassed. Li Weiming, who had no intention of fighting, took advantage of the fact that everyone's attention was focused on Yuanzi and gave Yi Yang a wink. Yi Yang had no choice but to act as a clown, standing between the two of them. Yi Yang declared expressionlessly, "Let's stop here. If we fight again, I'm afraid it will hurt the relationship. We can fight again another day. If you don't agree, you have to get past me first." There was no choice but to call it a day. Even the wind on the playground seemed to hold its breath, quietly staring at the three people in the center. Li Weiming had almost no scars, but his eyes were full of anger and unwillingness. Yuanzi's clothes could not cover the scars on his body, but his face was calm. Yi Yang stood in the center with an expressionless face, and no one knew what he was thinking. Yi Yang slowly walked up to Li Weiming and said something, but Li Weiming pointed at Hiken and Harma, who were gradually getting up from the ground, and loudly rebuked Yi Yang. "My little brother is so powerful, and you still want me to do it myself." He scolded Yi Yang one sentence after another, as if he wanted to get back at his younger brother, without caring at all that it was he who asked him to save the situation. The scolding was just to convey to others that the big brother is superior to the little brother. However, surprisingly, Yi Yang was respectful and did not resist at all. He even seemed a little guilty. At the same time, on the other side of the playground, Yuanzi and his friend were supporting each other and leaving. Although Yuanzi's friend was not seriously injured in the battle, Yuanzi still ignored his own body and supported him carefully, fearing that he would be hurt again. Everyone looked at the situations on both sides, with many things they dared not say. They could only slowly disperse, only daring to treat this matter as a topic of conversation after dinner. Yuan stopped and the time seemed to stand still when they passed each other. Yuan stared at him for a long time, as if he wanted to see something from Yi Yang's calm face. Yuan couldn't help but wonder. Why is he doing this? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 14 Yi Yang Wuyi. After school on Friday, Yi Yang was walking home alone. His mood was heavy and complicated, just like the gloomy sky above his head, depressing and heavy. His guilt and uneasiness towards Li Weiming were like a huge rock pressing on his chest, making it almost impossible for him to breathe, and he was also confused and worried about his future. He looked at Yuan's and stopped. He and his friend walked side by side on another road. Their laughter and conversation floated in the air with the wind, which made Yi Yang feel uncomfortable. Until he saw them walk into the blind spot of his vision, and their laughter and conversation drifted away with the wind and could no longer be heard. This made Yi Yang feel lonely and lost, as if he was an orphan abandoned by the world, and then he slowly moved his steps. Yi Yang always felt as if there was a figure moving behind him. He looked back several times, but saw only an empty street with no one else. He couldn't help but wonder, was it his illusion? However, when he looked back again, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure from the corner of his eye quickly hiding in the alley next to him. Yi Yang gradually started running, as if he wanted to get rid of his troubles. His speed was extremely fast, like a wisp of smoke, and few people could match him on the runway built specifically for source warriors in the city. Yi Yang ran to the slums outside the city of Jijia. The environment here should be hard for many people to imagine. No one expected that with such advanced technology, there would still be such a dark place. The dilapidated houses, narrow streets, and the damp and musty smell in the air make up the unique atmosphere of this land. The sunlight is blocked by the high-rise buildings in the inner ring, casting only mottled light and shadows. Yi Yang shuttled through it, and could hear screams from time to time. "Come in, don't hide." Yi Yang pushed open the shabby wooden door with a sharp creaking sound, and pointed out Yuan's who had been following him. Yuan's walked out from behind the moss-covered wall and entered Yi Yang's home with a little embarrassment. The room was dark and damp, with the only window blocked by a tattered curtain, not letting much light in. The furnishings in the room were also extremely simple, with a worn wooden table, a few wobbly chairs, and a bed that took up most of the room. The bedding on the bed had been washed so much that it looked white, but there were a few delicate little flowers embroidered on it, showing the owner's ingenuity and love for life. Sitting on the bed was Yi Yang's grandmother. Her face was pale, her eyes were sunken, the traces of time and the torture of illness left deep marks on her face. She leaned quietly on the bed, knitting a sweater, and greeted Yuan's with a kind smile. "Let's talk here." Yi Yang pulled Yuan's into a small room. It turns out that Yi Yang has been an orphan since he was a child, and has been dependent on his adopted grandmother. But a year ago, his grandmother was diagnosed with a rare source disorder syndrome, which can make people live worse than death when it occurs. There is only one extremely expensive special medicine in the world that can alleviate it. Where can I buy this medicine? As an elite trainee, can't most medicines be reimbursed? Yi Yang sighed, with a bitter expression on his face. Who wouldn't want it? But this special medicine is monopolized by the Li family, a family with a long history in the medical field, and it is not on the reimbursement list. So you took the opportunity during that assessment to surrender to Li Weiming. There's nothing I can do about it. So when Yi Yang saw an opportunity during the assessment, he surrendered to Li Weiming and helped him. He wanted to exchange it for medicine, and Li Weiming did give him several courses of medicine. Can't you just continue to follow him? Yuan's felt a little unhappy, but he didn't want to make things difficult for others. That's why I hide my strength. Yi Yang had inquired about Li Weiming's character and deliberately concealed his strength in order to prevent him from being jealous. However, after being exposed this time, Li Weiming, who is narrow-minded by nature, might deliberately interrupt the medication and torture him and his grandmother. Humph, that's consistent with his usual style. Yuan slammed the table, seeming somewhat indignant. I'm a straightforward person, I want to ask you for help. Me? What can I do to help? I want to meet the master behind you. I don't have anything. Yi Yang suddenly knelt down and kowtowed deeply to Yuan's. Yuan's was most afraid of seeing these things, as if he had traveled through time again and saw the scene of his father kneeling down to Li Weiming in order to raise money for a bottle of useless medicine. I felt like I was just like Li Weiming, the unkind and narrow-minded person. Please stand up quickly. I'm just your classmate. How can I accept such a great gift? Yuan's tried to pull Yi Yang hard, but found that he couldn't move this stubborn donkey. You have to know that Yuan's other defeat when he entered the elite class, or even the only defeat, was caused by him, and it was an all-round massacre. However, it must have been a token of his loyalty to Li Weiming. Now Yuan's no longer has the strength to pull him up. I know there must be someone behind you. I've heard that your family is very ordinary, but I heard that you were able to enter a martial arts school to practice, and the chip in your hand is very valuable, which is definitely not something you can get by yourself. Yi Yang's eyes were determined. He put his hands on the ground and wanted to kowtow again. I can help, but I have to ask him first. Yuanzi stopped him helplessly, and you have to stand up first. Yi Yang stood up, tears welling up in his eyes, and said excitedly, I will never forget this great kindness. After saying that, Yi Yang was about to kneel down again, but Yuan's quickly stopped him. I haven't given you a definite answer yet. Yi Yang also realized his own gaffe and told Yuan's more. Many people around here have this disease, and I didn't do it all for my grandma. Yuan stood there, thinking for a long time, and felt that the matter was not simple. Take me to see other sick people's homes. Other families who fell ill were not as lucky as the grandmother in Yi Yang, who received drug treatment in the early stages of the disease when it was relatively mild. The walls of many patients' homes were covered with scratches, and they kept emitting heart-wrenching screams. Some even ended their lives in a hurry. Is this disease contagious? Yuan's looked at an empty house and seemed to have thought of something. Especially those with very low energy values. Once they come into contact with these patients, they will be infected almost immediately. Many families are already left with no one. Yi Yang sensed what Yuan's was thinking and said it out loud. Moreover, this disease will become more and more serious over time until they die in agony. And I was also infected with this disease when I was a child, Yi Yang added. My grandmother said that the symptoms were almost exactly the same, so I was abandoned, but I miraculously recovered later. Isn't your grandma infected? I don't know. Maybe it was an infection that lay dormant until old age, when its source of energy declined and it broke out. Okay, got it. I'll try to help. It was getting late, so Yuan's left here quickly. Yi Yang watched Yuan's disappear on the horizon and was about to open the door to go home when a dark shadow appeared and Yi Yang suddenly fell into coma. Verify the target's identity. The man's bracelet swept across Yi Yang's face, and a few large words popped up on the panel. Yi Yang, top student in the first middle school of JA District, identity confirmed. Chapter 15. The area of justice cannot remain constant at 12. What disease? When Li Haisheng heard about the illness of Grandma Yi Yang and other people around him, he seemed a little out of control. He punched hard, and many things in the laboratory fell to the ground. Source force disorder syndrome. Yuan's repeated in detail the symptoms that Yi Yang told him. Calm down, I need to calm down. Li Haisheng muttered to himself, looking a little flustered. He squatted down to pick up the scattered things. The Li family is really a bunch of beasts. They are still doing this kind of thing. Yuan's did not let his curiosity continue to drive him, but silently helped his master pick up the things on the ground. After packing up, Li Haisheng started smoking again, and suddenly asked Yuan's out of nowhere, "Do you know how many wrong things I have done in my life?" Yuan's remained silent, not knowing how to respond. I developed this virus when I was still in the Li family laboratory. Li Haisheng took a puff and quickly put it away, calling up the holographic screen and checking the information. Yuan's, look at this. It records in detail the application of the source force virus. The last log is a video that tells the process of how to use genetic programming chips to develop the C virus that causes source force disorder syndrome, and the speaker is his young master. Do you understand? The C virus was developed to imitate the effects of the mutation source. It was developed to study the evolution mechanism of the mutation source. I originally wanted to promote the development of this era. Master, this is not your fault. No, actually I knew they were doing this before I was expelled, but I was the one who was avoiding it. You left the Li family, so I know you are not one of them. So what? The virus I created is now being used by them for human experiments. You have to know that the lives of people in the slums are also lives. How can you treat human lives like this? It was the first time that Yuan saw his master reveal so many secrets about himself. He seemed a little overwhelmed and didn't know how to comfort him. Li Haisheng's eyes were filled with pain and self-blame, as if the heavy burden of all these years was weighing on his heart at this moment. He took a deep breath and took out a cigarette, but his hands were shaking so much that he couldn't light it. Forget it, smoking is bad, I won't smoke anymore. Li Haisheng threw the cigarette into the trash can and looked at Yuan Zi, who was silent. At that time, I had not yet developed the antidote, and the experiment was still limited to the stage of animal experiment. My brother and I had a serious disagreement on the next experimental direction. Master, is it because of that incident? Yuan's asked carefully, afraid of saying a wrong word. Not entirely. Things were very complicated back then. Li Haisheng sighed, not knowing where to start. There was also genetic programming, source power potion, etc. It even involved 3 other families and a mysterious force. Mysterious force. Is it related to what we saw last time? They are 2 different things. After all these years of investigation, Elder Yang only knows that their organization is called Ghost Plague. There are no other clues, so the water is very deep. Elder Yang also advised me not to pursue this matter any further. So okay, we've talked enough about this topic today, let's ask something else. Li Haisheng looked calm, and seemed to have recovered from his previous frustration. Li Haisheng looked at Yuan's silence and knew that Yuan's had received too much information today and might not have reacted yet. Let me tell you a rumored story. In history, it was said that there was a small episode in which 11 students wrote a 125-page report to report academic misconduct, but in the end only 1 person was severely punished. You have to know that sometimes the area of AA justice cannot remain constant at 1/2. In the end, it may only be 1n. I think that is meaningless. Remember what I said, you still have a lot to learn, so how is your internal energy practice going now? Li Haisheng gradually changed the subject. Yuan's hesitated for a moment and then demonstrated silently. The breathing method and boxing method of the first stage are very smooth, without any flaws. Li Haisheng looked at Yuan Zi with appreciation. It seems that you can practice the breathing method and ancient boxing method of the second stage. Will there be such a big improvement this time? I really can't say for sure. After all, your physical condition is still quite complicated at the moment. Your source power is still slowly declining, and the gene chip has been successfully transplanted. Li Haisheng paused, and thought of something, and your source power seems to be different from others, but the existing instruments can't detect anything unusual, and I can't tell. Let's see if the AI design in the future works. Let me teach you the second stage first. The first stage of boxing techniques are mostly basic movements such as footwork and balance. It is not difficult to practice them persistently. The important thing is to lay a good foundation for everything. The second stage has more boxing techniques, which are still more basic. The first stage of the breathing method also focuses on adjusting the basic rhythm of the source force battle, so as to train a special way of exerting force, internal strength, but for you it can increase the source force. The second stage can make your breathing more stable, and I estimate that the biggest effect for you is that it will increase the source force a little more. Li Haisheng demonstrated the movements, constantly breaking them down for instruction, while patiently answering Yuan's various questions. Yuan's also started to follow suit. He also gradually immersed himself in the flow state, which is a state of absolute concentration in learning. He immersed himself in it and forgot all the surrounding affairs, and only remembered what he was doing, thereby greatly improving his efficiency. This is different from the flow in combat. In combat, it is more about capturing the flow of source power and seeing through weaknesses, and being able to keenly perceive all subtle changes around. Now that you have the gene chip, the accuracy of your movements seems to have improved. The breathing method can shorten the side effects of the amulet. It seems that full recovery is just around the corner. Li Haisheng felt relieved when he saw his apprentice training attentively, and a smile appeared on his face again. Yuan's completely practiced this stage of breathing techniques in ancient boxing techniques, and came out of the flow state, his body already covered in sweat. The movements are relatively accurate, but I'm not very skilled. Go back and follow the movements in my video and compare them yourself. Remember to bring the patient's tissue sample. I'll try to make the antidote. Li Haisheng threw a few glass containers over. Use these to hold the samples. I've also sent you the operating instructions. Okay. Li Haisheng looked at Yuan's who was leaving, and suddenly he collapsed against the pillar of the laboratory. He was afraid that he could not protect Yuan's, and he was afraid that more people would suffer. This feeling of powerlessness of not being able to protect others was ravaging Li Haisheng. Back then it was the person Li Haisheng loved, and now it is everyone in this world. Chapter 16 Right and Wrong. Dingle bell bell. The school bell rang in Yuan's ears. His classmates were packing up their things and walking out of the school in groups of 3 or 5. Yuan's turned his head and looked at the seat that had been empty for a day, and a sense of inexplicable uneasiness surged in his heart. He turned down plans to train with his 2 best friends. Yuan's bought some supplements, walked through the noisy streets, and came to the dilapidated door again. He knocked on the door and shouted, "Something good is going to happen, something good is going to happen. Please come in." Yuan's pushed the door open and saw the old lady sitting beside the bed, her eyes slightly red, staring at him dully. Her voice was trembling a little. "Do you know where my dear grandson has gone?" "Grandma, I just knocked on the door and said it's good news." Yuan's laughed and squatted beside his grandmother, whispering to comfort her, "Yiyang, he entered the secret department of China and is going to do great things for China. You should be proud of him." A hint of doubt flashed across Yiyang's grandmother's eyes, but she was immediately relieved by Yuan's gentle gaze. "Good children, you are all good children. It seems that Yiyang has made great progress." Yuan's took the opportunity to make up a white lie. "Grandma, do you remember? I came to discuss this with Yiyang last Friday night. Yiyang left in a hurry and didn't have time to say goodbye to you. Today, the organization specially sent me to give you a physical examination. In the future, we will make good arrangements for your medical care and daily life." He successfully followed the master's instructions and obtained the required sample from the old lady, saying that he would take it for testing. "Okay, everything is fine." Yiyang's grandmother looked out the window with a kind smile, as if she had seen Yiyang's bright future. Yuan suppressed his sadness and left Yiyang's home with the samples. He then contacted his master and informed him of Yiyang's disappearance. His master then asked him to return to the laboratory immediately. As soon as he stepped into the outer door of the laboratory, Yuan heard a fierce argument between Master Yang and his master. "Why did you buy these? Do you really think I'm old and dumb and don't know what you want to do? I feel sorry for those people and my dad. I don't want to go on like this. I didn't build you a lab for this. So what? Are you really going to do this? Just give the stuff to me and I'll pretend nothing happened." "Impossible." Li Haisheng's tone became noticeably softer in response to Mr. Yang's questioning. "Alas, you are courting trouble. If discovered by the Li family, Yuan's will be." Old Yang's words seemed to suddenly die out, but the meaning was already very clear. It turned out that Mr. Yang discovered that Yuan's had already walked into the inner door of the laboratory and was about to stop. "I think Master is right. We can't just think about ourselves." Old Yang looked at Yuan's and shook his head, angrily. "As expected of you, brought up by your master, you are right, you can't just think about yourself, but have you thought about yourself? And you, Li Haisheng. At that time, if I had asked you to be more patient, it wouldn't have turned out like this. Old Yang turned around, pointed at Li Haisheng and added. Mr. Yang, let's have a fight. If I win, I will do as my master thinks. If you win, it's up to you. Yuan said to Mr. Yang in a somewhat angrily tone. What are you talking about? Mr. Yang is a Nirvana-level warrior who is 8 levels higher than you, and I can't win for sure. Li Haisheng pulled Yuan's, telling him not to act on impulse. You two really looked exactly the same when you were young. Old Yang was so angry that he laughed. In order to save you from being accused of bullying the weak, let's do this. I'll take the simulation cabin from the laboratory and seal it to the trainee level, but you can't use the chip. 3 games, best of 3. Yuan said neither humbly nor arrogantly. Okay, that's it. Old Yang was a little surprised that this guy didn't bargain at all, but just changed the competition system. It seemed that he was quite strategic. The two entered the capsule-like simulation cabin, and the first duel began. As soon as he entered the simulation space, Mr. Yang demonstrated his extremely rich experience. He first attacked Yuan's, forcing him to retreat, and then he did not rush to suppress him, but suddenly disappeared from his sight. Old Yang did not attack from behind, because the enemy must be highly alert to the changes around them at this time, and it was not enough to take advantage of this opportunity. Old Yang made another attack, and Yuan subconsciously wanted to attack Old Yang on the left side. Old Yang saw the opportunity and pushed away the attacking right hand, making a fake move to force Yuan's to cover his vitals with his left hand. Elder Yang immediately attacked Yuanzi's lower body, causing Yuanzi to stagger a little. Facing Yuanzi, who was retreating and dodging, Elder Yang did not hesitate to pull out his right hand, which had not yet completely retracted, and threw him over his shoulder. Although Yuanzi was able to predict Old Yang's movements through the flow, he was too late to defend himself anyway. He could only passively immerse himself in Old Yang's fighting rhythm and be knocked down again and again. There was no suspense in this match. Yuan's lost. After a short rest, the two started a new round of fighting. Yuan's also knew Yang Lao's fighting style from the previous game. Through continuous changes of moves, he dragged his opponent into his own rhythm. But Old Yang's weakness was also obvious. Even though his source power had not yet recovered, after his old age and cultivation had been suppressed, not only was his strength and speed weaker than his own, but Old Yang was also unable to sustain a long period of source power consumption compared to his own. Yuan's quickly flew in front of Old Yang. He punched quickly, and a punch left an afterimage. Old Yang felt that this boxing style was very familiar, but he didn't have time to think about it. He had to avoid the kick to his chest first. I saw that Elder Yang clenched his fists and put his arms in front of his chest to block the attack, but he was also pushed back a long distance by the internal force. Before he could catch his breath, he kicked him with great force. With a dull thud, Old Yang heard the bones of his arm crackling, and he could only mobilize his energy to restore the bones. This is not good enough at all, but Yuanzia's basic skills are really solid. He has passed this level. Old Yang's thoughts began to waver. After a series of defenses, Mr. Yang's internal energy returned to zero and he was unable to continue fighting, so he was judged as the loser by the system. The third scene is a real outdoor battle. Both of them were very aware of their opponent's strengths and weaknesses, and adopted an extremely cautious and tentative attitude to explore the other party's cards. Both of them took a defensive stance, staring at each other and circling around each other. After the test, Yuan's charge was blocked by the experienced Mr. Yang and he was suppressed by Mr. Yang instead. However, Yuan's cleverly used the terrain obstacles to disrupt Mr. Yang's fighting rhythm. On the surface, the two were evenly matched, but in fact, Yuan's also felt that Mr. Yang had been holding back, as if he was testing him. At this point in the battle, Old Yang was already very confident in this kid, Yuanzi, who could fully utilize the strengths and weaknesses of both sides as well as the surrounding environment to defeat his opponent. Even the young Li Haisheng did not have such a fighting talent. Maybe this kid can do it. Old Yang suddenly had another idea. Then, Yang Lao followed Yuanzi into the canyon and fought head-on, thus losing the third game. Li Haisheng, who was watching the game, also discovered that Mr. Yang did not use his real moves in these 3 rounds, and he understood what Mr. Yang wanted to tell him. You're a good kid. Old Yang walked out of the simulation chamber, the displeasure on his face had long disappeared. Mr. Yang, you are too kind. I am still far from it. Yuan's also realized that Mr. Yang did not use his full strength, and this battle should not have ended like this. You can't leak the breathing method and ancient boxing method you use, otherwise the Li family will definitely hunt you down. Boy understands. Elder Yang nodded and said solemnly, since I have already promised you, I will naturally fulfill my promise. I will not take the equipment and materials away, and I will also arrange for Grandma Yiyang. Haisheng, you can start developing the antidote. But there is one thing you must pay attention to. The medicine given to Grandma Yiyang cannot be given to other people. The Li family has been observing secretly. If too many people suddenly recover, it will definitely arouse their suspicion. Aold Yanga's expression became serious and he reminded. Yuan's and Li Haisheng both nodded solemnly to show that they understood. Elder Yang then revealed some important information. In the past 2 years, all the government cities in Province S have been in turmoil, and many students have disappeared for no reason. According to my investigation, this is the work of the ghost epidemic and the Li family. Yuan's, you have offended Li Weiming, so you must be vigilant. After Master Yang left, the master and disciple looked at each other for a long time and both thought of the same thing. The reason why Yuan's fainted 2 years ago. Right or wrong is not important, what is important is why it is right or why it is wrong. Chapter 17 The Fear of Stolen. Is it? That's right. Before I was expelled, no experimental subject could survive the torture of the C virus, including humans and source beasts. Li Haisheng kept scrolling through the information in front of him, his eyebrows furrowed. Your classmate's disappearance must be related to this. So he must have been captured by the Li family and used as an experimental subject. It's highly likely. His extraordinary talent is probably given by the C virus, just like the mutation source. I really have no idea. Let's not talk about this. You just said that the new ability you gained when you were in a coma 2 years ago has recovered. Let me see what that is. Yuanzi mobilized the energy around him to form internal strength on his fist, and then a deep black mist slowly wrapped around him, and he could vaguely see a black face moving quickly in it. The mysterious power that had made him dizzy before was now mastered by him. This is the first time I've seen this kind of power. However, judging from your situation, you should have unlocked the genetic lock in advance. Li Haisheng carefully observed and recorded while mobilizing instruments to examine Yuan's body. Gene lock. As you know, there are 9 levels of source warriors, and the nirvana level is almost the limit of human power. However, there are very few people who can break through this nirvana level, unlock the genetic lock of the body, and gain some special abilities. There are also a few geniuses who can obtain the ability of gene lock at the nirvana level or even earlier. For example, I unlocked it at the extraordinary level. Then I am a genius among geniuses. I am only an apprentice. Stop interrupting and listen to me. Li Haisheng didn't even raise his head as he tapped on the keyboard in front of the instrument, programming something. I discovered the mechanism of gene locks a long time ago, and I also proposed and developed gene programming. I originally wanted to use gene programming technology to develop a C virus to simulate the evolution mechanism of the mutation source, so that humans can collectively unlock the gene lock, so that ordinary people can also fight against the source beasts. Li Haisheng finished what he was doing and turned to Yuan's. The instrument also started to turn automatically. Have you seen X-Men? No. Yes, those video materials before the catastrophe are difficult for ordinary people to obtain. Simply put, this is the story of a group of mutants who have unlocked their genetic locks and the entanglement with ordinary people. Only this. Play Days of Future Past. As soon as he finished speaking, the film was projected in front of Yuan's through a holographic projection. Yuan's watched curiously, and Li Haisheng also began his own explanation. The superpowers possessed by mutants frighten ordinary people, and this fear leads to their rejection and discrimination against mutants. In the film, even high-ranking US officials are afraid of this and want to eliminate all mutants in the name of protecting national security, which leads to fierce conflicts between the two sides and even among mutants themselves. While watching the movie, the instrument kept flashing lights. It took about an hour to complete the inspection and enter the stage of data analysis. After the movie ended, Yuanzi tilted his head and asked, whether they are ordinary people or mutants, they are all human beings and lives. Don't they have the right to survive? That's the point. So what about the current world? Isn't it the opposite? Isn't it a world dominated by a few people? Isn't it equivalent to a small number of mutants, firmly holding the power of the gene lock of this world, not allowing ordinary people to get involved? Yuan's looked at Li Haisheng with confusion and puzzlement in his eyes. You'll understand when you're older. Li Haisheng patted Yuan's on the shoulder. The data analysis is finished. Here's a simple summary. Take a look for yourself. Yuan's took the written report. My body is normal, my energy value is average, my mental strength is extremely strong, and my special ability is to make people feel like they are in the most frightening thing. It can be understood as the ability to use fear. No wonder, a long time ago, 2 hooligans were scared by my beating. It turned out that my ability was working. To be honest, your gene lock ability is quite interesting. Psychic genes are rare, and your mental power can not only defend against mental attacks, but also analyze other people's mental attacks and transform them for your own use. It is worth studying carefully. Why can my gene lock be unlocked so early? I have entered all your data. Let me study it slowly. Li Haisheng thought of something in his mind. If the situation in Yiyang is true, I feel that I am close to inventing a method for all people to unlock their gene locks, or even a method for all people to become source warriors. But it's a pity. We must rescue Yiyang if we have a chance. Yuan saw that his master was a little unconfident and changed the subject. Master, where is your gene lock? Mine. I'll scare you if I tell you this, but my gene lock ability is recombinant genes. Its castrated version is equivalent to the gene programming chip I gave you. A hint of confidence appeared on the corner of Li Haisheng's mouth again. Shit, mine is so useless compared to yours. You're just a living, sentinel robot, from the movie. I'm not that strong. Ability depends on how you use and develop it. I've basically focused on scientific research, so my combat talent is just so-so. Aren't you strong then? You are only slightly stronger than Mr. Yang, but that's not important. Li Haisheng smiled. You are amazing. You let those two guys who attacked you lose more than they gain. You also unlocked your genes at the trainee level. If I were suddenly attacked, I wouldn't have enough time to program my genes. That's why I said, I am a genius among geniuses. Yuan suddenly became proud in front of his master. There's no good in being arrogant. You should think about why others didn't arrest you. How could those people leave hidden dangers when they do things? The master knocked Yuan's head heavily. Strategically despise the enemy, tactically take the enemy seriously, and never be without confidence. Is this the confidence that gives you the courage to fight against Elder Yang? Isn't it? This is what you taught me, master. Humph, now you can use my words to lecture me. Yuan's looked at the master with a bit of seriousness. But the master suddenly smiled happily, a smile that was brighter than ever before, as if he had untied some knot in his heart, a smile as innocent as a child. Something suddenly popped out from the instrument next to it, with a hint of cold air. Upon closer inspection, it was a plate of capsules similar to medicine. At the same time, a piece of news popped up, interrupting Li Haisheng's smile. Let's go, the antidote is ready. Let's go see Yi Yang's grandmother. Elder Yang has also arranged a suitable place for her to live. Li Haisheng picked up the plate of potions and grabbed Yuanshai's like Yang Lao grabbed the chicken last time. He stepped into the portal in front of him and prepared to leave the laboratory. Why are you like this? Save trouble. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 18 Organ City. Put me down. Yuan struggled and fell from the portal to the ground, then fell on his back. Li Haisheng shrugged his shoulders, looking as if he was used to it. Li Haisheng and Yuan's arrived at their destination through the portal, where Grandma Yi Yang lived. This is a one-story house, equipped with a butler, and robot servants are moving around the rooms. But it covers a vast area, and Yuan's can see through the flow of his mind in combat mode that it is surrounded by invisible forces. However, what shocked Yuan's even more was the scene inside the house. The green trees were shady, the flowers were fragrant, and the fish in the pond were swimming happily, as if it was a paradise on earth. This is in stark contrast to the gloomy atmosphere of the slums surrounding the city. This is the worst living environment in the inner ring of the machinery city. How about it? You've learned something new, right? Li Haisheng was not showing off, but rather mocking. The upper class enjoys wealth and glory, the middle class works like cattle and horses, and the lower class ants have no one to care about their lives. Yuanzi also knew that the mechanical city was a city divided by countless mechanical gates, and it was also the last refuge for humans. The towering walls surrounded the entire city, like an indestructible barrier, isolating the threat of the source beasts. However, this did not mean that life in the city was comfortable. The machinery city is a city with a strict hierarchy. There are strict regulations on what level of people can go to which ring, so Yuan's parents cannot live in such a house. S01, one of the two mechanical cities in S province where Yuan's is located, accommodates nearly a million people. The shortage of living resources has exacerbated the strict hierarchy in the city, and everyone is struggling for survival. In fact, this was also done intentionally by Li Haisheng in order to temper Yuanzi. At this moment, Grandma Yi Yang is already in the nursing home. This way, Grandma Yi Yang will believe what you said and will be able to spend her old age in peace. Now you can rest assured, right? Li Haisheng did not respond to Yuan's words. He handed the capsule to the housekeeper and talked about other topics. Yes, there's nothing else to do today. Do you still want to see that grandma? Forget it, I always feel a little guilty. Yuan sighed, feeling very heavy in his heart. Then I'll go meet your parents. It's been a long time since we last met. Okay, I'll ask my parents to prepare a few more dishes. Ha ha ha, I have a bottle of good wine here, drink some with your dad. Li Haisheng didn't consider himself an outsider at all. When he arrived at Yuan's house, he started drinking with Yuan's father with some peanuts. How has Yuanzi been doing lately? He asked me to beat him up when he didn't obey. After 3 rounds of drinking, Li Haisheng's face flushed slightly. He patted Yuan's father on the shoulder with satisfaction and said, "Old Yuan, you really gave birth to a good son. Yuan's is smart, talented, and willing to work hard. He will definitely be a dragon among men in the future." Yuan's father grinned happily, his red cheeks full of pride. No, it's all because of your good teaching, Haisheng. Without your guidance over the past 10 years, Yuan's would have no chance, don't you think? So, I have to punish myself with a drink. Yuan Chong filled the empty glass, drank it all, and then shook the glass. Haisheng, your wine is really delicious. I'll toast you too. Haisheng picked up the glass with both hands and drank it all. You two should drink less and eat some food. Yuan's mother Mei Jianan brought out a dish of fragrant braised pork from the kitchen and placed it in the middle of the dining table. Yuantai, come and eat. The meal is ready. It's really delicious, better than the chef at home. Well, it's just home cooking, not some delicacies from the mountains and the sea. It can't be compared. I'll punish myself with another drink. No, this is the taste of home. After working hard in the city for most of the day, the most comfortable thing is to have a drink at home. Li Haisheng thought of his father at this time, and the scene of them drinking together to celebrate his research results. The two men's wine glasses made a crisp sound in the air, and their faces were filled with smiles. There is also good news today. Yesterday my good girl told me that she has a stable job, and it is an important position. Why didn't you say it earlier? Why don't you punish yourself with a drink? Yuan's younger brother Yuantai muttered while eating. He seemed a little rebellious and actually urged his father to have another drink. Ha, yes, I'll have another one. Old man, I think you are just looking for an opportunity to drink old wine. Mei Jianan tapped Yuan Chong's head and asked him to put down the wine glass. You drank too much, so drink less for me. Today is also a good day, wife. Yuan Chong seemed a little helpless. It's rare to have a drink. Li Haisheng also helped Yuan Chong to smooth things over. That's right, Haisheng, don't be polite, eat your food. After eating and drinking, Li Haisheng and Yuan Chong started talking about men's topics again, discussing martial arts, as well as the recent situation in the machinery city in China. Yuan's listened quietly at the side and occasionally interjected a few words to express his own views and understanding. When talking about the current situation, Li Haisheng frowned and looked a little worried. The situation in the machinery city has become more and more turbulent recently. There are too many unstable factors. Yuan's father nodded in agreement. Yes, I also heard that things in Jijia city have been a bit uneasy lately. But we can't really care about that. We can only live one day at a time. I also heard that many students have disappeared. I don't know whether it's true or not. Yuan's, please pay more attention to it. If possible, Yuantai, please also help out. Yuan Chong's red face also showed worry about the future. Of course, Li Haisheng agreed. Your daughter is quite capable. I guess she'll have a new house to live in soon. No, this house still depends on you. They sat together and chatted for a long time. It was getting late, and Li Haisheng was ready to leave. In the community, Yuan's was seeing his master off. It's a city of traps. There are traps everywhere. Li Haisheng sighed as he looked at the starry sky. I didn't drink too much. So what if I drank too much? It's rare for me to get drunk. The master turned his head and looked at him with relief. Yuanzi, you really changed me deeply, do you know that? It seems like you really drank too much. You sound fake and corny. No, Li Haisheng staggered. You're still saying no, but you can barely walk. This is for you, and the other one is for your brother. Li Haisheng threw two different bracelets over, for self-defense. Yuan stopped and carefully took the two bracelets. How do I use this? The instructions are in the bracelet. You will know once you put it on. Li Haisheng waved his hands, walked out of the community gate, and signaled Yuan's not to follow him. Li Haisheng glanced back and found that Yuan's had turned his back. Li Haisheng then stretched his joints, and the smell of alcohol and the red face gradually disappeared. He walked forward step by step. Drunkenness always speaks the truth, just as people always speak the truth on April Fool's Day. Chapter 19, Interlude of the Martial Arts School Assessment. On the 15th, it is the monthly assessment day for awakened warriors. Today is also the 5th assessment day of this year. Theory 71, Source Power 64.9, Practical 63.8, Total Score 199.7. A mechanical female voice announced, failed the awakening assessment. This assessment is a simplified martial arts test, equivalent to a small martial arts test for all adult non-school students. The requirements for apprentice warriors to be promoted to awakened warriors are also very simple, that is, the total score in the three tests of theory, source power, and actual combat must exceed 200, and each score must be no less than 60. Although it is a simplified version of the martial arts exam, only about 5% of warriors can pass it every year. What bad luck. The man looked unhappy. He passed the test yesterday, but because he was nervous today, his score dropped. Niming Hao, it's okay. You've improved a lot compared to last time. Yuan's patted the guy on the shoulder and joked. Is this your luck? If you were a senior brother, you would have passed the assessment a long time ago. It will just depend on next month. Niming Hao leaned close to his ear and asked. Yeah, isn't this easy to do? Your academic performance is so good, you should be able to get into the elite training camp. Ni Minghao paused, but then again, it's also good, I can still polish it. Oh, who is this? He failed by 0.3 points. He really deserves to be Master Li's good disciple. The familiar and harsh voice came to their ears again. They knew it was that despicable face without even looking. A man with a self-righteous air in every move came over with his apprentice. It seems that your master is too embarrassed to see me. My apprentices have passed the assessment. Yuanzi stared at him, a petty person who was always calculating. After he and his master had a grudge over a trivial matter, he was like a lingering clown, constantly showing off his disgusting presence. What are you so proud of, Zhang Xiao? My senior brother was able to get into the elite training camp. Who do you think you are? You are being disrespectful, but I am in a good mood, so I won't mind it. Zhang Xiao suddenly put away his arrogant look and became serious. I don't bully the weak. I also have a disciple who can be admitted to the elite training camp. Li Weiming, you and Yuan's, why don't you spar with each other? Enemies often meet on a narrow road, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Since Yuan's fell, Li Weiming has maintained the first place for several months. But recently, his ranking has dropped to third, with the first place being occupied by Yuanzi's close friend Hekan, and the fourth-placed Halma is also showing signs of surpassing him. What was even more difficult for him to accept was that the second-place girl, Ranner, whom he deeply loved, actually developed feelings for Yuan's. A playful look appeared on Zhang Xiao's face, pretending to be provocative. It seems like he's unwilling. It seems like that cowardly Haisheng has trained a bunch of cowards. Ha ha ha. Why not? Yuan's came here today to test how well he has recovered. This is also an opportunity to beat Li Weiming up. Zhang Xiao thought to himself, this is just a way of showing off. It looks like both the master and the disciple are going to lose face today. I'll be the referee. As soon as Zhang Xiao finished speaking, Yuanzi rushed over, without any need to give face to Zhang Xiao and Li Weiming. Okay, first move. Li Weiming was shocked by Yuanzi's sprinting speed, but fortunately he was not as fast as him, so he subconsciously moved away. While Li Weiming was making some adjustments, Yuanzi leaned forward and moved closer to Li Weiming from below. It seems that I haven't fully recovered yet. I can only use some theoretical skills and the fighting rhythm I learned in the simulated battle with Master Yang. Immediately, Yuanzi's body seemed to become a tight bowstring, full of powerful potential energy. He narrowed his eyes slightly, clenched his teeth, and then suddenly, he pushed the ground with his feet, and began to exert force with an almost imperceptible twisting movement of his waist. This movement was so fast and smooth, as if a swift black mamba was attacking in a catapult. Immediately afterwards, Yuanzi's arm seemed to be driven by a huge force and swung upwards at an astonishing speed. His fist was wrapped in a black mist, and his knuckles were bulging, like a cannonball hitting Li Weiming's abdomen. The rapid speed of the fist caused the air to be squeezed at this moment, making a sharp whistling sound. Li Weiming felt something was wrong. While keeping his whole body stable, he leaned his upper body back as far as possible to delay the impact. Li Weiming was worthy of being a martial arts genius. After hearing the whistling sound of the fist, he acted decisively. Without caring about the harsh words he had just said, he raised one leg to naturally shift his center of gravity to one side. He tilted his body, lowered his arms to his lower abdomen, and placed his palms outward with his hands folded. He took the powerful blow head-on, and then threw Yuan's out to the side. Yuan's also knew that the damage was limited, so he took the opportunity when Li Weiming was thrown away to apply hidden power to Li Weiming's entire arm. At this time, the palm of Li Weiming's right hand, which caught the fist, had begun to swell and turn red. He could not make a fist, let alone exert any strength, and his entire arm was aching slightly. Damn it, wasn't I still declining in the last test? How come Yuan's has become so strong again? Li Weiming was suddenly filled with fear, and scenes of himself being defeated by Yuan's suddenly flashed through his mind. Yuan's controlled his body and began to rotate slightly. Using the force that threw him away, he supported himself with one hand and flipped to the right side behind Li Weiming. Second move. Li Weiming came back to his senses when he heard the sound, but he had already lost the best opportunity to adjust. He turned his head back to move his shoulders, and his feet also began to turn, trying to turn his body as quickly as possible, but Yuan's leg was already whistling towards his face. Without any chance to counterattack or defend, he had no choice but to use his right forearm to block Yuan's attack. Crack! The hidden force exploded in this attack, causing his right forearm to be fractured. In severe pain, Li Weiming struggled on the ground holding his arm. Yuan's approached Li Weiming, and Li Weiming recalled again the fear that he had been in control of a year ago. He was like a stray dog, using his left arm and legs to support his body and kept backing away, covering his face with his broken arm and saying tremblingly, no, late. Yuan stared at the injured part of his body, ready to give him a good warning. The third move. Stop. A shadow passed by, and Zhang Xiao took ghostly steps, pulled Li Weiming over, and quickly returned to the original place. Yuanzi's attack missed, he patted his clothes, regained his composure, and withdrew from the battle. He was not panicked at all, because before he exited the flow, he sensed that Zhang Xiao would not attack him, and he also sensed some changes in the surroundings. Yuanzi bowed to Zhang Xiao with a smile, and told everyone the ugly things Master Li had told him about him. I heard that you used your connections to practice for 2 years and barely passed the martial arts exam, is that right, Master Zhang? You little jerk, you have no respect for your elders. Zhang Xiao finally got angry. As long as the accusation was made well, he would be righteous. Zhang Xiao continued taking the same steps as before, and seeing Yuanzi neither avoiding nor hiding, he felt a little strange. At the critical moment, just when the slap with great force was about to hit Yuanzi's face, a hand appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Zhang Xiao's wrist. With a light tap, Zhang Xiao drew a parabola on the dome of the martial arts hall and flew out. Didn't I hide very well? And you knew I was next to you? Li Haisheng asked curiously as he put his arm down, still holding it high. My spiritual power has detected it. Yuanzi noticed that Li Haisheng glanced at Li Weiming, but Li Weiming pretended not to see it and turned his head away. No wonder you are so calm. Zhang Xiao held his waist in embarrassment and slowly stood up from the ground. You are the only one who is laughing at me. Are you going to fight me? You old thing who has achieved success late in life. Ni Minghao next to him raised his middle finger and did not forget to add another knife. Zhang Xiao was so angry at him that he just stood up half of his body but collapsed again. Seeing that Zhang Xiao could no longer be arrogant, the three of them laughed out loud at the same time, and even the masters next to them couldn't help laughing out loud. You are really going too far. Do you know that I am still Zhang? Zhang Xiao was about to say something when he became mute and started yelling. At this moment, the president just walked out of the office and flew down from the upstairs. What happened? President Mao Hua asked Zhang Xiao in a low and gentle voice. Nothing, I'm just sparring with Master Li. Zhang Xiao patted his trembling body and immediately got behind the president. That's it, then. The exchange is over. Director Zhang is coming over now. He has something to discuss with you. The president turned around to look at the two of them, then left with Zhang Xiao. Is this the president coming out personally to help out? Does Zhang Xiao have this kind of relationship with the president? Questions popped up in the minds of the people around, and they all had their own ideas. Soon everyone stopped paying attention and continued to watch other warriors' assessments. This was also a form of entertainment, such as occasionally seeing strange people taking the four-legged assessment speed test. Hey, is there something wrong with today's test? Li Haisheng frowned and patted the strength tester hard. Why are everyone's score so low? Ni Minghao came over curiously and watched Li Haisheng debugging the equipment eagerly. Really? Do you want to try again? Li Haisheng nodded, took a deep breath, and then threw a punch. His movements were clean and neat, and his strength was controlled just right. In theory, it should be 100 points. However, the score displayed on the instrument was only 98 points. He shook his head and looked at Ni Minghao with a wry smile. It seems that you are lucky. Let's try another device. After changing the equipment, Ni Minghao successfully passed the test. At the same time, Yuanzi also completed the routine test accompanied by his master. His source power has steadily increased to the qualified level, which shows that his body is gradually recovering and returning to peak condition is just around the corner. On the other side, in the president's office, the president suppressed his anger, grabbed the documents, and started working. The president threw down all the approved documents, slammed the table, and roared at Zhang Xiao in anger. He was completely different from the gentle and drizzling appearance just now. At this moment, the president was like a violent storm. It's fine if you hit the students, you can always find some excuse. But don't ruin our good thing. You are such a useless piece of trash, I really shouldn't have left you here in the first place. You want to slap someone, right? I'll let you slap as much as you want. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Xiao couldn't help but slap himself with both hands. The slapping sound continued, wave after wave. It was obvious that he was using more force than when he hit Yuanzi just now. But it was obvious that the president was still not satisfied and slapped him into the wall. Can we even mention Zhang Zhiying's name? Chapter 20 The Birth of the Inner Demon. Time passes by unknowingly, and the bell of college entrance examination is just around the corner. In this resource-constrained society, everyone has only one chance to take the college entrance examination and the military examination, and the opportunity to change one's destiny must not be missed. Dingle bell bell. Yuanzi came out of the flow, stretched, and prepared to go to the playground to exercise. This state is very useful, but the mental consumption is also huge. It would be best to do some simple exercise at this time. Your condition is getting better and better. Halma looked at Yuanzi with envy. Hey, I came to the classroom to say hello but you ignored me. Ji Xueren frowned and pouted, looking a little unhappy. Yeah, you're not bad either, Halmar. Look at your muscles. How did you train them? Teach me. Yuan's pretended not to hear and deliberately ignored Ji Xueren. The two of them were demonstrating some moves, and Halma even said that he would take him to the gym together. The two of them were talking and laughing, which made Ji Xueren very angry. Others don't want to pay attention to you, so why are you joining in the fun? Are you trying to please a cold butt? He can suddenly shot a sneak attack. How rude of you to meddle in other people's business. You guys are so annoying that you can't even spit out an ivory. I'm so pissed off. I won't care about you anymore. Seeing Ji Xueren walk away, Yuan's breathed a sigh of relief. I also know that Ji Xueren just wants to stay with me for a while longer. After all, they should go their separate ways after the college entrance examination. Since we are not a good match, these beautiful things can only be buried in memory. Oh, you're so silly. Why are you doing this? I've been the bad guy these days. You like her too, right? Just tell me when you have the chance. He asked in confusion. Do you really expect me to marry a rich woman so that I can work less for 50 years? Besides, how can I be a gigolo? I should wear a 3-foot sword and accomplish unprecedented feats. Yuan's raised his head and said with disdain. You can eat it soft or hard, or you can cook it raw. IXXX. Ah, are you so strong in your hands? Be gentler. Ouch, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. There was no more frivolous tone in Hekan's words, and they were immediately full of vitality. After being scolded, Hekan became less rude. I heard that your strength has recovered, so it seems to be true. You haven't fully recovered yet. Yuan's looked at him with a wry smile, clasping his hands together and rubbing them hard to make a sound. No, 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 yes, yes, I get it, let's talk it out, now is not the time to compete. Hekan waved his hands quickly. By the way, your parents haven't been home for a while, right? What mission did they go on? Hekan's parents are both warriors, and they were considered a legendary couple in the school. They were admitted to the elite training camp with first and second place respectively. Unfortunately, they reached a bottleneck too early, and have only been able to reach the level of intermediate extraordinary warriors, unable to make any progress. Someone asked for a few sets of extremely rare super-class iron-armored tortoise shells, and a few days ago he told me it would take about a month to deliver them. Then the two of them chatted casually to pass the exercise time. There are only a few days left before the college entrance examination. The teachers no longer put pressure on students or give lectures. They just give out some simple exercises for students to practice or for free training. Yuan's also has more room to arrange his time independently. He has been training a new set of ancient boxing in the playground these days until the school is empty. This boxing technique is from the Ji family. It was exchanged by Ji Xueren herself. It is beneficial to enhancing source power. It is very similar to the Li family's boxing technique, and the effects are far beyond the reach of ordinary boxing techniques. When he finished his last set of boxing, he lay down on the grass. On the other side of the playground, a figure stood, his eyes as sharp as a hawk, staring at Yuan's lying on the lawn. It was Li Weiming. He had a sinister look on his face, and his eyes revealed deep hostility. Since the last injury, Li Weiming's arm has been healed by his family and is back to normal. But physical injuries are easy to heal, but emotional injuries are hard to heal. The fear that Yuanzi brought to him took root in his heart and gradually evolved into an indelible demon. Whenever it was late at night, he could feel that fear like a ghost in the dark, haunting him all the time and making him unable to calm down. In order to defend the family's honor, to fulfill his mission as an heir, and to conquer the stubborn Ranner, Li Weiming is determined to completely destroy Yuan's future. For this reason, he even begged his father to help him resolve his inner demons, borrowed a treasure, and intended to put Yuan's to death. Li Weiming used all his energy to activate the treasure and launched an attack. At the moment when the beam was about to enter Yuanzi's body, Yuanzi seemed to enter a mysterious state, and the passage of time around him became slow. He still maintained a calm attitude, neither dodging nor defending. But in Li Weiming's eyes, the beam of light was flying rapidly towards Yuanzi's forehead. A cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he couldn't help but imagine the miserable scene of Yuanzi's brain being destroyed and turning into a madman. However, at the critical moment, the originally invisible bracelet on Yuanzi's hand suddenly expanded into a shield-like LCD panel, reflecting the beam of light back. Li Weiming's pupils suddenly shrank, and he was horrified to find that he could not control the rebounding beam. He tried to dodge and panic, but the speed of the beam was much faster than he imagined. With a scream, Li Weiming was hit hard in the waist and abdomen by his own attack. He flew out like a kite with a broken string and fell heavily to the ground. No, how is this possible? Li Weiming cried out in shock as he lay on the ground in a mess. Isn't this the most difficult defensive force field in the family to make and use? How come he has it? How could he possibly use it? Damn it, Li Haisheng actually gave this to him. He couldn't believe what he saw. The family's core secrets were easily displayed by Yuanzi, and he didn't even see his operation. This was simply the biggest mockery of him. Anger and fear intertwined in his heart. Li Weiming knew that there was no way to save the situation at this moment, but he still clenched his fists unwillingly, with deep fear revealed in his eyes. Yuan's looked straight at Li Weiming and walked slowly towards him. He did not show any pride or sarcasm, but said calmly, "If you do this, it will only make you more miserable." Li Weiming sneered, as if he had heard a joke. He stared at Yuan's, his tone full of resentment, pain. "Ha ha ha ha. I should have made your father kneel down. I am the heir of the Li family. I have known since I was a child that I am different from your servants. I have everything I want and I can do whatever I want. I was born on the top of the mountain. It is my privilege to have everything I want, and this world exists to welcome me. All the cheers and honors are mine." Li Weiming was extremely hysterical. "You are wrong." Yuan's recalled the scene of humiliation of his father, stepped on his face, and leaned down. "You should be thankful that this is a school. You will not be in any real danger. Your family's glory, status, and resources are not earned by you, Li Weiming. Not to mention, they are like passing clouds and can disappear at any time." Li Weiming struggled with anger and humiliation, but the severe pain in his body made him unable to move. He stared at Yuan's with wide eyes, as if he wanted to carve this face into his bones. "Do you think you won?" Li Weiming's voice was hoarse, but it revealed a deep chill. "Yuan Zi, I tell you, this game has just begun. I will make you pay a more painful price than I did. I'll be waiting for you at the elite training camp." Yuan Zi loosened his feet, stood up, and looked into the distance with a cold gaze, "But remember, next time, I won't show mercy." Yuan's figure gradually disappeared at the other end of the playground, leaving only his cold and determined back. The wind blew gently, and it seemed that even the air carried a hint of coldness and disdain, as if mocking Li Weiming's embarrassment and incompetence at the moment. End of this chapter. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.